Hey people, welcome back to the channel. This is a story in which Madara is Naruto's grandfather. He implanted his and Hashirama's cells into Naruto and trained him, which made him extremely strong. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, leave a comment if you want to suggest fanfic. Check the description for credits and support the creator of the story. So let us begin. Uchiha Naruto, the Sage Chapter 7. Genma looked at the burns on his body and winced, remembering how it hurt when he got burned. He looked at the crowd and smiled. Second match of the Chunin exam finals, Subaku no Gaara vs Rock Lee. Genma said aloud. Both contestants made their way to the battleground. Genma looked between Lee and Gaara. He could tell that the two were going to give the crowd a good match. Are both fighters ready? He asked, earning a nod from Lee while Gaara gave no response. His face just remained emotionless. Begin. He yelled and jumped to his seat where a medic was waiting for him to take care of his burns. One could tell Gaara was a bit excited about the match because the moment Genma said the match could begin, sand shot out from his gourd and swirled around him. Lee studied his opponent for a moment. Guy had told him that his opponent was dangerous and he should be careful. He had also been told to take off his weights should the situation require him to do so. He did not have to ask for permission to take off his weights this time. Lee got into his taijutsu stance and motioned for Gaara to come at him with his right hand. Gaara wasted no time as his said shot towards Lee at fast speeds. Lee jumped back to avoid the sand. When he landed on the ground, the sand was waiting for him. He was forced to use his great reflexes to avoid the sand from catching him. Guy had warned him to avoid being caught by the sand at all costs. Lee rushed at Gaara, who had been in the same position since the match began. He attacked Gaara on his left side by attempting to kick him. Sand blocked Lee's foot, preventing him from hitting Gaara. Lee blurred to Gaara's right, attempted to kick the sand genin again. The sand protected Gaara, again, forcing Lee to jump back. Sand shot towards Lee at a fast pace. Lee readied himself, and when the sand reached him and attempted to kick it away. A mistake on his part, as a part of the sand was blown away by the force of his kick and a part was not. The part that remained almost wrapped itself around his leg. He did enough to blur away from sight. Lee landed on the ground and studied Gaara. The sand made it difficult for him to hit his opponent. He needed speed to bypass the defense. Lee ran towards Gaara with a plan in thought. He appeared in front of Gaara looking as if he wanted to punch the genin. Gaara's sand tried to wrap itself around Lee, only for Lee to disappear and appear behind Gaara. Lee swung his leg attempting to kick Gaara from behind. But just as he was about to land a hit, the sand appeared and blocked his kick. Lee jumped away from Gaara. Bypassing Gaara's sand was proving to be harder than he had thought it would be at his current speed level. The crowd was cheering as the fight was certainly entertaining even when none had landed a hit on one another. At the contestants' booth, Konkuro had a wide smile admiring Gaara's sand. No one had ever landed a hit on Gaara. Gaara was untouchable with his sand and there was no way Lee would be able to touch Gaara, well, that was according to him. Lee appeared in front of Gaara and attempted to punch Gaara with the strongest punch he could master. The sand tried to block his punch, but the punch broke through. Just as it was about to make contact with Gaara, another wave of sand appeared in its path and this time blocked Lee's punch. Lee did not stop with just a powerful punch. He spun around, swinging his leg, bringing forth his most powerful kick. Gaara brought forward his sand to block the kick. But the sand did not stand a chance against the power behind Lee's kick. Lee's foot marched towards Gaara's face, but again, just as it was about to hit, more sand blocked its path. But the results were different this time, even the sand shielding Gaara, he was sent flying away towards the wall. Gaara's sand created a cushion before he hit the wall. Gaara smiled maniacally at Lee and walked a bit towards Lee before he stopped. He moved his sand with his hand this time. When he was moving it with his hands, it was moving at a faster speed than before. A wave of sand almost wrapped Lee from behind, but Lee disappeared from sight, dodging the sand, albeit barely. Lee rushed at Gaara, dodging waves of sand that were trying to wrap themselves on him. Lee dodged each sand attack skillfully. When he reached Gaara, he was unable to attack the Jinchuriku as he found large amounts of sand waiting for him. Lee quickly disappeared from view, avoiding the sand. If Lee was going to break through Gaara's defense, he would have to step up his game. Lee looked at his sensei as if asking for permission. Guy nodded, making Lee smile. Despite Guy having already given him permission to take off his weights during his fight, it felt right asking for permission again. He took of the weights on his legs and held them with both his hands. Gaara only raised an eyebrow wondering what his opponent was up to. Lee let go of the weights. Boom, they hit the ground and shook the stadium slightly. The weights created 2 craters on the battlefield. Almost everyone had wide eyes at the effects of Lee's weights. It was just unimaginable how a young lad like Lee could be able to wear such heavy weights and still move as fast as he had been moving so far in his match against Gaara. Guy just smiled proudly at his student. It was not easy for Lee to be able to wear such heavy weights, but through hard work they did it. It was his efforts along with Lee's dedication to being the best taijutsu user that made Lee became what he was today, a shinobi he was proud to call his student. Lee took a taijutsu stance with a serious expression on his face. Lee vanished from his spot. Only a select few saw him move. The others just blinked a few times looking around the battlefield. Their efforts were rewarded as Lee appeared behind Gaara. Gaara turned around with wide eyes showing his shock at Lee's speed. Lee swung his right leg at Gaara. Gaara's sand was unable to react fast enough to leap into his defense. Lee's kick connected with Gaara's face. Gaara was sent flying, but before he could hit the walls, Lee appeared above him facing down and kicked him hard on the face. Gaara crashed down the ground creating a crater. Lee landed on the ground gracefully and waited for his opponent to recover. Gaara stood up from the crater and brushed his fingers against his mouth. He looked at his fingers and saw blood. To some it was most shocking because none had ever seen Gaara bleed before. It was shocking to see that someone had the speed to bypass through Gaara's sand and hurt Gaara. Not even Jonins had been unable to hurt Gaara, but a genin from Konoha had just done it. It was unbelievable. Gaara smiled maliciously. Blood, my blood, he said to himself, then looked back at Lee. Mother wants your blood, Gaara said maliciously. I must feed on your blood to prove my existence and erase yours. Lee looked at Gaara showing a bit of confusion, but he later shrugged it off and dashed towards Gaara. Only small gusts of winds could be seen upon where he had been standing. A large wall of sand appeared in front of him blocking his path. Lee jumped up passing the wall. While he was still in air he began to rotate furiously towards Gaara. Konoha Senpu. Lee yelled as he delivered a spinning kick to Gaara. Gaara's sand came to the rescue and blocked Lee's kick. Lee spun around and attempted to kick Gaara with his other leg, but the sand blocked his kick again. Lee flashed out of sight and appeared behind Gaara. He swung his right hand and delivered a punch at Gaara's face. Gaara had been unable to block due to the speed on the attack. With his full speed Lee was able to bypass Gaara's defense. The punch sent him flying, but Gaara quickly recovered and landed down the ground gracefully. Lee watched with wide eyes as sand around Gaara's face began to peel off. Gaara's thin layer of sand reformed again on his skin. It was his secondary defense mechanism. Lee gritted his teeth in frustrations. So far he had not been able to damage Gaara. It was like all his efforts were pointless. To win he had to risky measures. Lee suddenly blurred out of sight. He was running at his speed's peak. Lee kicked Gaara into air and used Shadow of the Dancing Leaf to get behind Gaara while still in flight. He let loose of his bandages and wrapped it around Gaara, restraining him as gravity began to pull them down. This should end the match. Lee exclaimed confidently. He and Gaara began to rotate furiously while they fell down the ground as a spinning vortex. Gaara hit the ground head first. Lee was also hurt as the technique was a double-edged sword. But Lee, being the user of the technique, received less damage than his opponent. Lee panted as he watched the debris where Gaara was lying. The crowd began to cheer, applauding the technique and also thinking that the match was over. But everyone's celebrations were cut short as Gaara let out a maniacal laughter. Lee could not believe what his eyes were showing him as he watched Gaara stumbled up and stood up with a maniacal grin, and blood dripping from his mouth. His sand swirled furiously around him. I must really drink your blood, mother wants it. Large torrents of sand began to fire at Lee mercilessly. Lee did his best to dodge all of the attacks. But keeping up with Gaara's sand was tiring him. Gaara was sending the sand at Lee tirelessly without even taking a break. With the smile on his face, it was obvious that he wanted to crush Lee with his sand. Lee found himself backed against the arena's battle floor. He was left to only think of defense as Gaara had been attacking him with his sand furiously. A wave of sand appeared in front him, stretched as if it was welcoming him for an embrace. Gaara grinned and made a fist encasing the sand around Lee. Subaku Q. Gaara said as his sand seemingly wrapped itself around Lee. Nothing happened, there was no blood that fell rained down the ground. Gaara was aware that he did not catch Lee because he did not feel him on his sand. Lee appeared a few feet away from his previous position. Some let out a sigh of relief seeing that the match was not over. It seems that I cannot defeat as I am, Lee said seriously looking at Gaara, then I must. He trailed off. First gate. Gate of opening. Lee yelled as the aura around him began to change. Second gate. Gate of healing. His skin began to change its normal color. Third gate. Gate of life. Fourth gate. Gate of pain. Fifth gate. Gate of limit. Lee yelled. He was surrounded by a blue aura and veins around his body had bulged. Gust of winds picked up where Lee was standing. The crowd was awed at the power Lee was emitting. It was defiantly not the power of your normal genin. This will surely end it. He said and disappeared. Only Jonins were able to follow his movements. Others did not see him move. Naruto was able to see him, he had his Sharingan activated, he did not deactivate it after his match with Neji. The next thing the crowd was Gaara in flight. Lee was striking him at inhuman speeds. It gave Gaara no chance to defend himself. Lee suddenly appeared above Gaara, reverse lotus. He yelled as he hit Gaara with a final powerful punch and kick at the same time. Gaara was sent crashing down like a bullet. He hit the ground creating a large crater. Some with experienced eyes saw that Gaara's gourd turned into sand and created a sand cushion before he hit the ground. Lee landed at the unwelcoming ground harshly due to the use of his technique. He had already closed his gates as he could no longer contain them. His body was bruised and his clothes were tattered. His breathing was labored and he was on his knees as he was unable to stand. The technique used too much power at once and left him without strength. It was why he used it as a last resort. The crowd cheered gracefully at the power of Lee's attack. They thought that it was surely over, as they believed that no one could stand again after crashing down the way Gaara did. The dust cleared revealing Gaara lying down in a crater. Sand was peeling of his skin and more blood continued to drip from his mouth. His sand had absorbed much of the damage he could have suffered. Sand coffin. Gaara said with his hand raised while he was still lying down. Lee found himself at the mercy of Gaara's sand. He tried to escape but his muscles were torn apart and he was out of strength because he had opened 5 gates and used reverse lotus. The sand caught Lee's left leg and hand crashing them. Arg. Lee screamed in pain as Gaara's sand crushed his hand and leg. He landed on the ground harshly. Gaara got to his feet slowly looking slightly worn out but had no significant damage on his body. Gaara chuckled darkly, "Mother will now have your blood." He yelled like a crazed person. Gaara's sand short towards an immobile Lee. Guy tensed knowing that Lee would surely die if Gaara caught him with his sand. In his condition, Lee could not do anything, it was now up to him as a loving sensei to protect his student. He rushed to the stadium to save Lee. He was not alone, a bandaged Genma had the same thoughts as him. Guy was able to get to Lee before Gaara's sand. He took Lee out of the path of the sand while Genma appeared before Gaara. "This match is over," he said sternly. Gaara ignored him and looked over to Guy and Lee. "Why did you save him?" he asked, his features having returned to his emotionless and cold facade. "He is my student, my pride and joy." Guy replied, almost breaking into tears as he walked away taking Lee to the medics. Lee had pushed himself too far. Opening the gates did damage to his body and Gaara's last attack did further damage. He feared the worst looking at his unconscious student, who had passed out because of pain that had gripped him. Genma looked at the murmuring crowd. "Winner, Subaku no Gaara." The crowd applauded, they had witnessed a truly great match. Gaara silently made his way back to the contestants' booth. He did not need a medic, as he was fine. Naruto was somewhat pleased with what he had seen. Both Gaara and Lee were capable genins. Lee had reached an amazing feat. To be able to compete with a Jinchuriku at the level he was. The boy was truly something, possibly the best genin in terms of hard work and dedication. "Will Subaku no Kankuro and Uchiha Sasuke step forward please?" Genma called out. Sasuke smiled excitedly and went into the arena. He was finally going to test himself against capable opponents. After watching Gaara fight, he now wanted to him also. Kankuro stepped forward but stopped before reaching the middle of the arena. "Proctor, I forfeit." His words were welcomed with boos all over the stadium. Kankuro seemed not to care about the jeers. The crowd had been waiting for Sasuke to fight. Some had come to the finals just to watch the only survivor of the Uchiha clan. With Kankuro giving up, they were being denied an opportunity to see Sasuke fight and observe what he was capable of. Many saw Sasuke as a genius, as he was the best student at everything he did when he was still at the academy. Genma looked at Kankuro without interest. He thought that if he did not he should have never come to the stadium. Sasuke was now fuming. He wanted to fight and would do anything to get that opportunity. He turned and stared at Kankuro with his Sharingan eyes. Why are you afraid of me? Sasuke said with a smirk, trying to get Kankuro to reconsider his decision. The crowd seemed to think the same way as Sasuke. However, it had no effect on Kankuro. He turned around and walked away. Sasuke gritted his teeth, seeing that his attempt had failed. He held out his right hand and lightning began to sparkle on his palm. No sooner than later, a sound of chirping birds rang throughout the stadium. Jonins recognized Sasuke's jutsu as Kakashi's trademark assassination jutsu. Chidori. Sasuke yelled as he ran towards Kankuro. If Kankuro did not want to fight, he would force him to. Many did not see a problem with Sasuke's actions, in fact they cheered. Kankuro was alarmed and turned around. He saw the jutsu at Sasuke's hand, widened his eyes. He did not actually think that the brat would go that far. Lucky for him, Genma knew how dangerous the jutsu was. Genma intercepted Sasuke and gripped his right tightly, making him lose control over his jutsu. The Chidori burst into sparkles of lightning before disappearing. Sasuke gave Genma a death glare, but Genma ignored it. He stared at Kankuro. You are lucky I stopped him. If I had not, that jutsu would have killed you. Kankuro scoffed and walked away, earning more boos from the crowd. Let me go. Sasuke yelled as Genma was still holding his arm. Genma ignored Sasuke again and looked back at the crowd. Uchiha Sasuke will proceed to the next round, he said. Kakashi as Sasuke's sensei appeared beside Genma and Sasuke. Genma let go of Sasuke. Kakashi touched Sasuke's shoulder and both disappeared in swirl of leaves. They appeared where the rest of the Konoha 12 were. Genma sighed. Will Nara, Shikamaru and Temari step forward please? Both contestants walked into the ring. Temari looked like she was the only of the two one to be prepared to fight. Shikamaru had his usual bored expression. Genma looked between both fighters. Are both fighters ready? He asked, earning nods from both fighters. Final match of the first round begin, he said and jumped back to his seat. Temari, being the only who seemed to be eager to fight, charged first at Shikamaru. She had seen him fight once and did not think that he could beat her. She thought no, believed that she was going to get an easy win. Her large fan was in her hands as she attempted to smack Shikamaru with it. Shikamaru dodged her, attempted and landed down as he began to compute ways of winning the match. After a minute, he had already computed several ways to end the match. The fight continued on as Temari showed her skills with a fan. The fan was used to generate powerful wind jutsus. Temari was certainly a skilled wind user, which was no surprise as Suna was famous for breeding wind users. Wind affinity, despite being very powerful, was very rare. Not a lot of people had a natural affinity to wind. It was a joy to see someone such as Temari demonstrates her skills with a fan. While Temari was on the attack, Shikamaru was running around the battlefield dodging Temari's attacks and throwing explosive tags at the girl. Luckily for Temari, none of the explosives tags hit her. She was not once caught in the explosions. Despite dodging most of Temari's attacks, Shikamaru was unfortunate and was hit by one of Temari's attacks. Luckily, for him, it did not give him much damage, all did was to give him a few cuts. Shikamaru was also trying to catch Temari with his shadow possession jutsu. He was skillfully trying in the best way he could to catch her. It was most surprising at how hard Shikamaru seemed to be fighting. None had ever seen Shikamaru try anything that hard unless a life was in danger. The results had gone the way Shikamaru had predicted. He finally was able to catch Temari and restrain her with his shadows. He forced her to pick up a kunai and point it to her neck with his shadows. He was controlling her movements and could make her to whatever that he wanted her to do. Temari had thought that the match was over and she had lost, but Shikamaru ended up forfeiting the match. She was surprised that he could forfeit the match when he was in the position to win. His reasons were that it was too troublesome to continue on, he had little chakra left and he just wanted to get the promotion. Temari could have refused to accept that she was winner of the match, but she accepted it. Her pride as a kunoichi had taken a bite because she did not proceed to the next round because of her skills but because her opponent had chosen to give up when he had her backed against the wall. The match in whole was rather worth watching. The crowd loved it and cheered at the end despite Shikamaru forfeiting when he could have won the match. Genma stood in the middle of the arena. We will now take a 20 minutes break before we. He trailed off as Gaara shunshined into the battlefield. I don't need a break, let us continue now. Gaara said emotionlessly. Genma sighed and looked at the Hokage as if asking what to do. The Sandaime just smiled at him telling him to do what he felt was right as the proctor. Okay, since one of the competitors seems not to need a break we'll begin the second round, Genma said earning cheers from the crowd, which seemed not to want the break. The matches will be as follows, winner of match 1 will face winner of match 2, and the winner of match 3 will face the winner of match 4. Genma said. The first match of the second round will be you. He trailed off remembering something important. A young woman from the crowd sitting at a seat near the fighting area of the arena spoke for him, Namikaze Naruto. The young woman earned chuckles from some spectators. Genma coughed to get everyone to return their attention to him. Thank you, he said looking at the young woman. The match will be Namikaze Naruto versus Subaku no Gaara. Now since Gaara is already here will Namikaze Naruto step forward please. Naruto appeared in the middle of the arena in a burst of flames. You can begin. Genma said returning to his seat. Gaara grinned maliciously at Naruto. Mother has been waiting to feed on your blood. Naruto raised a single brow. It was not the same time he had heard Gaara say mother and blood. He figured it was the Shukaku whispering things to his mind. Given what Zetsu had gathered about Gaara's childhood it was not surprising that Gaara would give into Shukaku's influence. I have seen the extent of your power, thus I have no reason to test you myself, Naruto said not bothering to reply on Gaara's words, I will not hold back. Naruto said. Naruto did hand seals and needed chakra inside body turning it into fire. Fire release. Majestic fire destruction. Naruto expelled a stream of dense flames that ignited upon reaching their target, Gaara. The fire expanded covering most of the fighting ground of the arena. Naruto held the flames for some time wanting to see how Gaara's sand would hold on. Gaara was in the middle of dense and intensive sand. A few were starting to fear for his safety. It was like he had been thrown in a pit of flames. Gaara had seen the flames coming and had his sand created a dome of sand around him. The sand held on but the intense heat of the flames heated his sand and made it unbearable for him. The intense heat inside his sand made it hard for him to breathe. The heat was sulking out the oxygen inside his shell. Naruto stopped his jutsu before he cooked Gaara alive. The flames cleared and Gaara's protective sand crumbled down into dust. Gaara fell on his knees with wide eyes sweating and trying to catch his breath. Once he had caught his breath, he got up from his knees and stood up. Cage Booth, your genin certainly is brutal Hokage done. The Kage said. The Sandaime nodded, yes he is. Still I am interested on how he will do against my Gaara. The Kage said. I think he will win the match, so far we have only seen him use fire jutsu perfectly and I don't believe that is all he can do. I believe there is much more we will see from him. The Sandaime replied. Jiraiya nodded agreeing with his sensei. He heard when Naruto said he would not hold back he wanted to see what he could do when he was not holding back. The Kage said nothing further. He chose to admire Naruto's skills and eyes. Back at the fight, you did well surviving that. Naruto complimented. He felt he needed to do so. No one could take his jutsu not be incarnated. But Gaara had defended himself well against his intense flames. It was worth complimenting. But will you be able to stand after my next assault? Naruto asked rhetorically. His Sharingan morphed into its Mangekyo state. Most who knew of the Mangekyo widened their eyes. To see Naruto wielding the Mangekyo at such a young age was defiantly shocking. Not even Itachi, who was a prodigy and a master of the Sharingan, had awakened his Mangekyo at a young age. The Kazekage's eyes lit yellow for a moment upon seeing the powerful Mangekyo Sharingan. He knew full well what one had to do to awaken it. He had done a lot of research about it. The Mangekyo made him admire Naruto even more than he was currently. He would be so feared if he could have both Sasuke and Naruto by his side. He wondered if Naruto had the Mangekyo when he fought him at the Forest of Death. Naruto crossed his hands on his chest while Gaara just watched him. A blue chakra began to form around him. The chakra became dark blue and took a form of a skeletal humanoid that surrounded Naruto. The beast's head, though skeletal, had dark yellow eyes and a thin skeletal chin. The beast grew to a larger size and unleashed a roar. Its size was enough for Naruto, as he wanted to be able to move freely in the confined space. The beast stretched out both its hands as blue chakra blades formed. Susanoo. Naruto said. Naruto's Susanoo shocked many who had never seen anything like this before. At the cage booth, the elder shinobi who knew what it was just widened their eyes. The cage chuckled darkly inwardly and sat at the edge of his seat. Jiraiya and the Sandaime did not notice as their eyes were firmly on Naruto. Gaara just continued to watch Naruto emotionlessly with his sand swirling around him. The crowd was awed by what they were seeing. They never expected such a thing from a genin at the Chunin exams. It was like watching a Junin exam, not a couple of genins displaying their strength. My incomplete Susanoo versus your perfect defense. We'll see which is the stronger. Naruto said to Gaara monotonously. He was not expecting Gaara to answer his question. Even if Gaara wanted to answer, Naruto did not give him a chance as his Susanoo began its charge. The Susanoo swung its right blade towards Gaara. Gaara created a wall of sand on his left to protect himself from the attack. The blade had much power and broke through the defense. Gaara reinforced his defense with more dense sand. This time the blade hit a wall but still pushed him. Naruto's Susanoo swung its left blade at a fast pace towards Gaara. His sand was still holding back the blade on his left and much of his effort was focused on holding back the other blade. He could not block the next attack. He jumped back, abandoning his sand. The Susanoo's blades returned next to Naruto. Gaara sent a wave of sand towards Naruto. The Susanoo swung its blade and propelled the sand away from it with its blade. The Susanoo fused its blades, making one long blade, and wielded it with its right arm. It swung the blade towards Gaara, who created a dense wall of sand in front of himself to avoid being hit. Naruto's attack broke through the sand and hit Gaara. The power of the attack sent him crashing towards the wall of the arena. Gaara created a large dent on the wall with his crashing. He winced as he felt like Lee had thrown his weights on top of him. The Susanoo brought its left hand, created a fist, sending it towards Gaara. The punch hit Gaara dead on and broke through the wall. Gaara let out a scream of pain as he felt the impact of the huge punch that hit his whole body. His second protective layer of sand was starting to peel off due to the damage his body was taking. The Susanoo dragged Gaara from the wall and dropped him in the middle of the arena. His mouth was pouring out small amounts of blood. While Gaara was still lying down, the Susanoo raised its right hand and slammed Gaara down the ground. The attack created a large crater on the battlefield. The Susanoo did not stop with its attack. It picked up Gaara from the crater and threw him towards the wall. Gaara's gourd burst into sand and created a cushion for him to hit, but he still created a large dent on the wall. All of his sand had now peeled off his skin. His body was heavily bruised and parts of his body were now bleeding also. His breathing had become labored. Had he been a normal person, he would not have been conscious right now. The ferocity of the attacks were too intense for a normal person to take them and remain standing or alive for that matter. Because of his sand, he only had a few broken ribs. Feathers began to fall inside the stadium and the crowd began to fall asleep. Genjutsu, I guess the invasion has started. Naruto said to himself. No sooner than later, fights began to break out inside the stadium. Naruto deactivated his Susanoo. When he looked at Gaara, he saw the genin siblings running away from the stadium with him. He looked at Sasuke and saw the genin going after them. Naruto shook his head. Gaara was in no condition to fight unless he used Shukaku's chakra. The chakra would heal and make him stronger than he was. Naruto suddenly on his knees under extreme pain. Using Susanoo had its benefits, but it put his body under extreme pain. The pain had lessened from the first time he had used it. With a lot more training he would be able to use it without any pain. Despite his body being the perfect vessel to wield any amount of power, he was still of young age and needed to grow his body into a more mature body. Naruto got up from his knees and found himself surrounded by 10 shinobis. The shinobis smirked at him as if they promised him pain. They were all sound ninjas. Judging from what Naruto could sense from them, they did not seem to be strong. Do you wish to dance with me? Naruto asked nonchalantly. He did not wait for a response as his Mangekyo activated. A second later, his Susanoo flared to life. With a single swipe of its blade, the Susanoo blew the Junins away from Naruto. The sound ninjas were hit hard as they did not have time to react. Naruto had attacked instantly without giving them a chance to ready for his Susanoo's attacks. The Susanoo's size receded and it became a rib cage surrounding Naruto. The shinobis Naruto had attacked got up and prepared to fight Naruto. Naruto sighed, placing his hands on his waist. He was almost embarrassed for thinking that his attack had incapacitated the ninjas. By the clothing the ninjas wore, Naruto could say some of them were Junins, but their level of strength paled in comparison to the strength of Junins from Konoha. Naruto deactivated his Susanoo. He flashed through hand seals. Fire style. Majestic flame destroyer. Gathering chakra inside his body and turning it into flames, he expelled a large amount of flames that spread out like a wave of water. It was just as big as the one he had used on Neji. It was a good thing for him, as he had never tested the jutsu on many people. One of the Jonins tried protecting himself and his comrades. Water style. Water encampment wall. He yelled as a wall of water tried putting out the flames. However, the flames spread out wide and were impossible to contain or dodge. One Suiden jutsu could not stop the dense flames. The flames reached the Junins and began to eat away their flesh. They let out screams of pain as the flames began to incarnate. Naruto just watched impassively as his jutsu incarnated the sound invaders. He turned around and jumped on the roof of the stadium. Looking around he saw a purple barrier on top of the academy building. Naruto figured that must have been where the leaders of both sides were fighting. Naruto looked carefully inside the barrier and found that it was Orochimaru fighting the Hokage, not the Kazekage. He concluded that Orochimaru had impersonated the Kazekage as he did with the Kusa-nin at the Forest of Death. Naruto was sure the Sandaime could take care of himself even if Orochimaru was his opponent. Despite the Sandaime being old and just a shelf of his former self, he was still capable of defeating even the likes of Sanins. He was by no means a pushover because he was old. Naruto acknowledged that fact about the Sandaime was still strong despite his old age. The barrier was set so that no one could enter nor leave. It was a perfect place to fight without annoyances interrupting. At the walls of the village large snake summons were destroying the village's walls. Konoha shinobi were trying in futile to stop the summons from entering the village. As Konoha shinobi tried holding off the summons, large toad summons puffed into existence and began to wrestle with the snake summons. It was given that Jiraiya had been the one to summon the toads given that he was the only one who had the toad contract. Naruto activated his Susanoo again. It was still a ribcage surrounding him. He wanted to fight deal with some sound and sand shinobi. Earth style. Mud dragon. A mud dragon hit Naruto from behind. The jutsu crashed into his Susanoo and sent him crashing down the ground from the rooftop. Naruto was so busy with his thoughts he forgot that he was in the middle of an invasion. Naruto hit the ground and created a larger crater. He was unharmed from the attack. His Susanoo shielded him from being hit by the earth-style jutsu. The Susanoo absorbed any damage Naruto would have suffered. Naruto was sent crashing because the Susanoo was not rooted down to anything but to Naruto. It went everywhere Naruto went. Naruto got up from the small crater unharmed, his Susanoo still protecting him. He looked up at the room to see those who had attacked him. I tend to be careless knowing that my Susanoo is active, guess I should deactivate it. He said to himself. Deactivating would also save him from using too much chakra. Susanoo consumed a lot of chakra from its user. Despite his vast pools of chakra, Naruto was not above acknowledging that keeping a Susanoo activated for longer periods would take a huge bite off his chakra. Two ninjas jumped down from the roof and surrounded him. Naruto did not move at all, his Mangekyo scanned them while his face remained impassive. Orochimaru-sama has some business to attend with you. He wants you to come with us, if you refuse we will take you by force. That attack earlier was just to show you we can take you by force. The one at Naruto's front said. He wore standard Junin attire and a sound forehead protector. Oh. Naruto muttered with a raised brow. I would prefer if you refused because I want to see what the great Sharingan can do. The one at Naruto's back said sarcastic while walking into his front. I bet I can take you on by myself. He exclaimed arrogantly. Naruto observed both Junins, they were stronger than the previous ones and seemed confident of their abilities. However, underestimating the power of the Sharingan was foolish thing to do. That is rather foolish. Naruto said, turning his one visible eye to the Junin who dared to mock his dujutsu. Foolish. Naruto gave no response. He pointed at the Junin, Tsukuyomi. The sound Junin found himself warped into another world. The world he was in was bloody red and black, even the sky was all red and black. All sides to be just endless void of red and black. Under his feet a giant eye in the same form as Naruto's Mangekyo Sharingan appeared. The look of the eye was menacing, cold, and devoid of any emotions. The eye brought fear to the Junin. He was suddenly pulled up into the air with both his hands stretched. He was nailed on a cross. Naruto appeared before the Junin. His face still showed no emotion. With his right hand he had a black blade which he pointed straight at the Junin. This is my world, in here I control everything, I see everything. For 72 hours, I will put you through an uncomfortable situation because of your arrogance. Naruto said, his tone devoid of any emotion. This eye is not happening, it's just a genjutsu. The sound Junin yelled. Naruto responded by piercing the man on his chest again, and again. The Junin screamed in agony at the pain he felt. Naruto's blade entered his body second by second without mercy. No blood dripped from his body, as the blade did not leave a wound. The sound Junin stopped screaming after a few hours. Naruto cancelled his jutsu. In the real world, the Junin Naruto had put under Tsukuyomi fell down to the ground unconscious. Only a second had passed in the real world. Tsukuyomi is the most powerful genjutsu in existence. Only those from the Uchiha clan to have awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan can perform it. The torture done in the world of Tsukuyomi affected the mind, bringing psychological trauma which was almost impossible to cure unless one was a medical expert. It only required eye contact to be casted. However, it consumed a lot of chakra and put a lot of strain on his left eye, which he used to cast the powerful genjutsu. He only lasted for 32 hours. Naruto said to himself. The other Junin bent down to his friend, seeing him fall. He touched his neck and felt his beat, albeit barely. He turned and faced Naruto, glaring at him with all the anger he could will. His best friend was down and he did not know what had happened to him. What he knew was that Naruto must have been there one to harm his friend. What did you do to him? He demanded. Naruto was unfazed by the anger of his opponent. Nevertheless, he did answer the question. I tortured him. He replied simply as if it was insignificant. The Junin gritted his teeth in anger. You little bastard, I will make sure you pay from this. He said, forgetting his mission. He took out a kunai and rushed at Naruto blindly in anger. He tried stabbing Naruto with his kunai several times, but Naruto dodged the sluggish attacks. The man was blinded by his fury that he could no longer fight at his level best. Naruto disdained weak-minded fools of shinobi who could not control their emotions. As the sound Junin grew frustrated, his anger reached new heights. He could explode at any moment as his frustrations added to his anger. Naruto made eye contact with the Junin, Sharingan, Genjutsu. He trapped the man in a Genjutsu. He hated fighting enemies who had no fight in them. It was a waste of his time and efforts. The sound Junin found himself trapped in another world. The world's sky reflected a rather huge eye version of Naruto's Mangekyo Sharingan. This made the world appear blood red. The sound Junin quickly realized that it must have been Genjutsu. However, before he could try to dispel it, a monstrous shadow with 9 tails appeared before him. The Kyuubi stepped forward slowly in a menacing form. Its large bangs glared at the Junin and its blood-red eyes looked through his very soul. He thought it was a Genjutsu, but he could defiantly feel powerful and hateful aura the Kyuubi emitted. The fear that had gripped him felt like it was real. What's going on here? He stuttered in fear. In response, the Kyuubi grinned darkly, making the Junin shudder at the dark grin. It was far scarier than he had seen from Orochimaru when he was excited about something. Kai. The Junin yelled. Kai. The Genjutsu did not disappear. It was not an easy Genjutsu to break if one was not adept to Genjutsu. Naruto had hit a jackpot. The Junin he had caught with his Genjutsu was not adept to Genjutsu. The Genjutsu Naruto used was his only Genjutsu aside of Tsukuyomi. Like any other Genjutsu, this Genjutsu trapped a person inside an illusion. Despite it being easy to detect because of the change of scenery, it was hard to break. The Genjutsu was similar to demonic illusions. Instead of showing people what they feared to cause trauma to victims, Naruto's Genjutsu fed on the fear of a person. The more a victim became fearful, the harder it became to break. It had a time limit of a single minute. The Kyuubi rushed towards the Sound Junin. It raised its paw and attempted to squash the Junin. The Sound Nin was in a state of shock as he was trying to figure out what was happening to him. He thought he was under a genjutsu, but it did not dispel when he tried to disrupt chakra inside his body. Still, he held little hope that it was still a genjutsu. He watched as the Kyuubi's paw hit him, compelling him down the ground. It held him there, leaving only his upper body visible. Its head closed the distance with him. He could perfectly see those cold blood-red eyes. The Kyuubi held the man and threw him up. It opened its mouth, waiting for the man to fall into its mouth so it could devour him. The Sound Junin eyes widened when he saw that he was falling straight into the Kyuubi's mouth. He let out a scream of fear as he kicked in flight, trying to move away so that the Kyuubi did not devour him. His attempts were fruitless as he continued to fall directly into the wide mouth of a beast that struck fear into anyone who came across its path. His body began to tremble as the thought of death sneaked into his mind. He did not want to die. He feared death despite the fact that as a shinobi he saw death each day of his life. Help me. Someone please. He yelled in despair, but help did not come. The Kyuubi got its meal and chewed it gracefully. The Sound Junin thought he was dead but was surprised to find himself alive. His relief was cut short as he saw the Kyuubi rushing towards him. He began to run away from the beast in despair. Though he did not feel any pain, he was experiencing any emotion he would feel if he had come across a situation such as this one in real life. Everything felt real, it was just that he felt no physical pain, but emotionally he was damaged. The Kyuubi finally caught up with him and tore his body apart piece by piece while he screamed, wishing for death, but none came. The process repeated 5 times before the Kyuubi stopped as the Junin's wife and daughter appeared before him. He could only mouth what he wanted to say as his voice had abandoned him. Nevertheless, his family did not hear him. The Kyuubi devoured them again and again while he watched. It was the most horrifying thing he could see. He felt lost without knowing what to do. His family was being killed over and over again while he watched. He could not say it was a genjutsu as everything felt real. He dropped to his knees as the situation threw him into true despair. He no longer hoped that he could escape from the nightmare. However, he kept mouthing, "Please stop. Please stop," as tears poured out of his eyes. He closed his eyes and when he opened them, he saw Naruto staring at him. He looked at his trembling eyes and then around he saw that they had returned to Konoha. Naruto appeared closer to him and whispered into his ear, "Run away. Tell Orochimaru that I refuse to follow him. Should he persist, I will find a way to kill him sooner than I would like." The Sound Junin nodded vigorously while trembling and crying. Despite his condition, he crawled away from Naruto. A minute later Naruto sensed something behind him. When he turned around, a foot crashed into his face. The kick sent him flying away. Naruto regained control over his body, flipped in midair, and landed down the ground with legs touching first then his hands. The kick was hard and had a lot of power behind him. Naruto had been unable to dodge due to the speed and unable to block because he was also off guard. Naruto recognized the man who had kicked him as Baki, Gaara's sensei. Another thing he took notice of was that the man was avoiding eye contact with him. Baki had seen what was going on with the different battlefields. He did not like what he had seen. Konoha was winning the invasion. It seemed that they had prepared like they knew they were going to invade. If Gaara had been taking part, it would not have mattered. But there was another thing he could do ensure that things went his way: kidnapping the son of the Yondaime Hokage. Unlike any other children of past and present Hokages, Naruto was different. Konoha loved the Yondaime more than they loved first Hokage. Capturing Naruto would force Konoha to give in to their demands. They would not dare try to abandon the only child of their greatest hero. If word got out that they had abandoned the son of the Yellow Flash, it would certainly take a huge bite off their image and economical structure. Very few villages would want to associate them if they abandon him. Baki smiled inwardly. His plan was indigenous. "You will come with me," Baki said in a commanding tone. He said it, still avoiding making eye contact with Naruto's eyes. "No," Naruto replied as his Sharingan returned to normal. Keeping his Mangekyo activated while not using any of the Manchuku's abilities would only tire him out. "I guess I have no choice then but to take you by force," Baki said and blurred out of sight. He appeared in front of Naruto and attempted to punch him. Naruto blocked the punch with both his hands. Baki swung his right foot high trying to kick Naruto. Naruto brought out both his hands to block the kick. The power behind the kick pushed Naruto back a few feet. Baki suddenly appeared in front of Naruto with his right foot raised. He attempted to kick Naruto on his chest. Naruto blocked the kick by both his hands as he could not dodge despite being able to predict what Baki was going to do. The power of the kick sent Naruto flying away. Naruto regained his balance and touched the ground with his hands and legs so that he could stop. Naruto rose up and looked at Baki. The man was considerably strong. He was worthy of being a sensei to a Jinchuriki. Fighting someone like him without his Mangekyo active would prove to be a nasty thing for him. Before Naruto activated his Mangekyo, Kakashi and Guy appeared in front of him, both in battle stances. Naruto, you go after Sasuke. He went after Gaara. Shikamaru, Choji, Kiba, Shino and Neji have already gone after him, but I think they will need your help, Kakashi said. We will deal with this one. Guy nodded. Yes, Naruto-kun, let your flames of youth burn brightly by saving your comrades. Naruto turned around. Fine, he said. Oh Naruto, before you go, take this, Kakashi said, handing Naruto a small piece of paper with a seal written on it. I got it from Jiraiya-sama. It's a suppression seal. It should be able to suppress Gaara's chakra should he try to use his Biju's chakra. Kakashi said, smiling at Naruto. Naruto took the seal and disappeared out of sight. Baki could have tried to follow him, but in front of him were two of Konoha's most powerful Junin. He could not get just past them. Guy was the fastest and Kakashi had the Sharingan and a number of jutsus in his arsenal. He prided himself in his strength, but taking on both the famed copy ninja and the green beast was a bit too much even for him. Let's go, Guy, Kakashi said, to which Guy nodded and both men charged at the Sand Junin. A few minutes later Naruto was running at top speed outside the walls of Konoha. By the direction in which the Sand siblings took he could pinpoint their general location. He would be able to find them given that there would surely be battles. Sasuke and the others would defiantly be fighting the Sand Genins. If Sasuke was not there they would not to fight, but Sasuke did whatever he wanted, so he would not listen even if his comrades told him not to fight. On his way outside the walls of Konoha, Naruto had seen Jiraiya battling against several shinobis from Sunagakur in the Sound Village. Despite the numbers being against him, Jiraiya was devouring his opponents with ease. It was not a surprising thing for Naruto to see. Jiraiya was indeed powerful despite that he was no longer in his prime. The man was already above 50 and still fought like he was 20 years old. Still, despite Jiraiya's impressive power, he was nowhere near the level of power Madara and Hashirama held. Naruto sensed a Biju's chakra around the forest he was currently headed towards and increased his pace. If Gaara was using Shukaku's power, it meant that he was in a position to fight at the highest level. A Jinchuriki using his Biju's chakra was not someone any normal person could fight on equal ground. A Jinchuriki fighting using his Biju's chakra can take on wounds that would immobile anyone and continue to fight as if nothing happened. A few minutes later Naruto arrived at the location his fellow Genins were fighting. A sound of chirping birds was welcomed into his ears. Naruto stopped on top of a tree and observed what was going on. He watched as Sasuke rushed at Gaara with his right arm palm sparkling electricity. Sasuke was covered by flame-like patterns all over his body. Sasuke had activated his cursed seal to be able to fight Gaara. Gaara had materialized a tail and a large right hand. They were features of Shukaku, but Gaara had willed them. It was not that Shukaku was trying to take control over Gaara. Gaara was very much in control, and with the creepy smile on his face one could tell he was enjoying himself. Sasuke attempted to pierce through Gaara's chest, but Gaara brought out his mini Shukaku hand and blocked the jutsu. The power of the jutsu cut through Gaara's hand but did not reach his chest. Sasuke gritted his teeth and tried to get away from Gaara. However, before he could, Gaara's tail was swung, hitting the Uchiha on his chest, sending him crashing towards the trees. Gaara's hand reformed again as he laughed maniacally. More. More. Come at me with everything you have. Gaara yelled like a mentally unstable person. His bloodthirsty nature had taken complete control over him. Gaara ran towards Sasuke and hit him on his chest. Sasuke groaned as he was compelled to the tree, almost breaking it in half. Gaara grinned evilly as he picked up Sasuke by his transformed hand. His other hand began to pummel Sasuke continuously. After a few minutes Sasuke's flame-like patterns receded back to the cursed mark of heaven. Gaara kicked Sasuke into the air and waited for Sasuke fall on his path so he could kick the Uchiha again. Just when Sasuke was about to be kicked, Naruto appeared in front of Gaara and kicked the Suna Genin in the face, sending him flying. Sasuke hit the ground with a thud. Nevertheless, he quickly got up and glared dangerously at Naruto. "What are you doing?" Sasuke asked rhetorically. "I don't need your help, I can take him by myself," Sasuke said. Naruto looked the young Uchiha and took a step towards the young Uchiha. What he was seeing picked up his interest. "Ho, you finally matured your Sharingan," Naruto said, stretching his left hand towards Sasuke's face. Sasuke made no attempt to try and get out of the way. Naruto touched Sasuke's forehead, making Sasuke recall the times Itachi used to poke him on his forehead. Sasuke took a step back as the thoughts of Itachi invaded his mind. Itachi's name always and thoughts always brought a darker side of him. Naruto's hand closed Sasuke's eyes. Sasuke was consumed by his thoughts to think of what Naruto might try to do to him. Naruto swung his right hand and hit Sasuke at the back of his neck, knocking the Uchiha out. Sasuke fell down to the ground with a thud. Naruto did not attempt to catch him. "Hey Naruto!" A voice called out behind Naruto. Naruto recognized the voice as Shikamaru's. "We will take care of Sasuke, you handle Gaara," Shikamaru said. He was standing under a tree with Kiba, Neji and Shino. Kiba seemed to be wounded, though not badly enough to threaten his life. Temari and Kankuro were tied together next to the Konoha Genins. Naruto said nothing. He jumped up onto a tree branch and looked at Gaara. Taking a fight with another Jinchuriki would not be good for his health if he did not fight seriously. He had been fighting for too long now and had used high-level jutsus, including the chakra-consuming Susanoo and Tsukuyomi. He was not running out of chakra, he just knew that it would end up nasty for him fighting a Jinchuriki for a prolonged time. He was also a Jinchuriki, but he never used the Kyuubi's chakra. He never used it all when fighting. Naruto chose to fight with his own power. The main problem was that Gaara could turn into Shukaku. If Gaara did succeed in taking the form of the Ikibi, it would prove to be nasty. Nevertheless, should he be fighting with Kyuubi's chakra, he would not have to worry about anything. The Kyuubi was the strongest of all the Bijus. It would be damning to his pride to lose to any Jinchuriki when he had the strongest Biju sealed inside of him. Naruto activated his Mangekyo, preparing to fight with the Sand Jinchuriki. He needed to go all out from the beginning to end the fight at a short time. "Naruto," Gaara called with a dark look spread across his face, "Mother wants me to devour you for what you did earlier to me, and so I will. Your blood smells good too. Me, I can tell it is delicious," Gaara said and ran towards Naruto. Gaara tried slashing Naruto's chest horizontally with his claw. Naruto was able to predict the attempt, thus he sidestepped. He was still faster than Gaara, which made it easy for Naruto to dodge Gaara's attack. Naruto caught Gaara's left hand and spun around twice, picking up speed. He threw Gaara and sent him crashing towards the tree. Gaara recovered rather quickly and jumped at Naruto again. He was faster than before. His clawed fist crashed into a tree branch Naruto was standing on and shattered it. Naruto had jumped up, not intending to try and block the attack. The power behind the strike would have proved that blocking was useless. Naruto blurred out of sight and appeared behind Gaara. He was going for a kick from behind, but Gaara's tail stood in the way. The tail swung and hit Naruto with enough power to send him crashing down the ground. There was nothing more annoying than getting hit by something you could see. His Sharingan was able to predict the attack, but in the position he was in, he was unable to dodge the attack. Gaara turned around and grinned madly. "Where is all that power you had? I want to see it again. Show it to me," Gaara said as he jumped to where Naruto had fallen. Naruto stood up and did a hand seal, fire style, great fireball. Naruto expelled the chakra inside his body he had turned into fire. The fireball he breathed out rushed towards the oncoming Gaara. Gaara brought out his tail and clawed arm to shield himself. The flame's intense heat burned Gaara's materialized arm and tail, making melting it. The materialized parts in Gaara's body crumbled down like sand. Gaara fell onto the ground with his legs. Ha. He started laughing like a maniac. "That's the power I want to see, I want more of it," he said, growing another tail and two hands. Naruto saw this and knew that it was a matter of time before Gaara turned into Shukaku. Gaara took off at a very fast pace and appeared in front of Naruto. Gaara swung his right hand attempting to hit Naruto. Naruto blocked the hit and attempted to hit Gaara, but the Jinchuriki blocked his attempt with his left hand. Gaara caught Naruto's right foot and threw the blonde away. Naruto was sent crashing towards the trees by Gaara. Naruto groaned as he tried getting up, but before his attempt could be a success, Gaara appeared above him. Both Gaara's clawed hands were speeding down towards him. Naruto could only bring both his hands to block. The power of the strike resulted in making his attempt to block useless. The double hand punch grounded Naruto. Gaara jumped up attempting to squash Naruto under his feet. This time was able to escape Gaara's strike. Gaara hit the ground with his legs, created a large crater. That would have been nasty if I got hit, Naruto said to himself. Gaara raised both his clawed hands pointing at Naruto. He began to shoot sand bullets at Naruto. Naruto jumped around the trees dodging the sand bullets. Gaara only increased the number of bullets he fired at Naruto. He was laughing maniacally as he was enjoying watching Naruto dance around. It was quite an amusing scene for him to watch. A dark blue ribcage surrounded Naruto, protecting him from Gaara's bullets. The Susanoo blocked all of Gaara's sand bullets. Naruto was unable to dodge. Gaara finally stopped, allowing Naruto a chance to catch his breath. Naruto deactivated his Mangekyo and prepared for another round. The Sand siblings watched their brother fight against the son of the Yondaime Hokage. He had defeated Gaara before, but when Gaara became what he was now, he was almost impossible to defeat. It was why they did not want to be close to the battlefield, or else they would also be caught in the crossfire. However, there was nothing they could do since the opposition who defeated them had tied them and were currently standing behind them watching the fight. Temari admired the strength Naruto showed at the stadium. However, watching the fight now, Naruto was at the defensive while Gaara was on the attack. She was begging to think that he would not be able to pull off a victory this time. Naruto channeled chakra into his feet for more speed. He suddenly disappeared and appeared in front of Gaara. He punched Gaara on his gut with a powerful punch. He proceeded to punch Gaara at his face several times before jumping up. Naruto swung his right leg towards Gaara. The leg connected with Gaara's face, sending him crashing towards the trees. Naruto landed gracefully on the ground, panting slightly. He held a hand seal and converted the chakra needed inside his body into fire style, flame dragon caterwall. Naruto said as he expelled 5 small flame dragons. The dragons sped towards Gaara. They were set to explode upon hitting their targets. 4 hit Gaara's arms and 1 hit Gaara's tail. All 3 materialized body parts exploded into flames. Gaara let loose of a pained scream because of the explosion. I refuse to be beaten. Gaara yelled out as he leaked considerable amount of demonic chakra. An explosion of chakra rocketed around him. Naruto remained calm despite knowing the dangers that was knocking. It was of no good losing calm because things were not looking good. If anything, losing calm made a person make rush decisions, resulting in mistakes that one would not have made had he remained calm. Naruto watched as the debris cleared. Gaara had transformed into a chibi Shukaku. Naruto created a wood clone and sent it towards the mini Shukaku. The wood clone sped towards Gaara and engaged him in a fight. While the clone kept Gaara busy, Naruto converted chakra inside his body into dense and intense fire going through hand seals. Fire style. Majestic fire destruction. Naruto said as he expelled a stream of intense flames towards Gaara. The clone was to keep Gaara busy while Naruto performed his jutsu so that it could not get away. The stream of fire hit Gaara and the clone, setting them ablaze. Both were engulfed in a sea of flames of intense heat. The fire spread out wide, incarnating everything it touched. Naruto knew Gaara would not be incarnated by the fire because of his form. His real body was inside of the beast he had become. The chibi Shukaku was like an armor. The flames would only burn the armor. Naruto stopped his jutsu and watched as the mini Shukaku crumbled down into dust, leaving a slightly burned Gaara. The Sand Genin was breathing heavily and his shirt was burned off his body, leaving him bare-chested. Gaara began to leak large amounts of demonic chakra that would make anyone run away for their lives. Naruto knew what was coming. He could not put Gaara under Tsukuyomi, as psychological trauma to Gaara would only free Shukaku since Gaara's mind was already unstable. He was forced to use the chakra suppression seal Kakashi had given him. Naruto rushed to appear in front of Gaara. He took out the piece of paper and placed it on Gaara's forehead. The chakra Gaara was leaking disappeared. Gaara fell down with a thud on his back. Naruto followed his example by following down on his knees. He breathed heavily for a minute before standing up again. Shikamaru and the others started to walk over to Naruto with their prisoners seeing that Gaara was down. Sasuke too walked with them since he had already come to after Naruto had knocked him out. He was very angry when he woke up but a thought sneaked into his mind. He decided to take up that thought to make up for being knocked out by Naruto. I lost. Again, Gaara said weakly to himself. His eyes traveled weakly towards Naruto. How are you stronger than me? He asked surprisingly calm for someone who was like a maniac. I train harder than you, Naruto replied, but I have been once told that you can be truly powerful when you fight to protect your precious people. Precious people. People you care about. Naruto responded. Fighting to protect your precious people. Is that why you are strong? I already told you, I am strong because I train hard to become strong. As for my precious people, they are all dead, Naruto replied nonchalantly. I must praise you for your strength. Had you fully transformed into Shukaku, I would have lost. Naruto said, his left eye narrowing behind him as he sensed several chakra signatures from behind. He turned around and raised a brow, seeing a wide grin from Sasuke. Shikamaru was the first to speak. Are you alright, Naruto? Shikamaru asked with a bit of concern in his voice. He saw Naruto fall to his knees and just wanted to make sure he was alright. Naruto nodded. Yes, just a bit worn out, he replied, his eyes going back to Sasuke. I see, you copied my majestic fire destruction. Naruto guessed correctly. Sasuke's grin only widened. What do we do about them? Neji asked. Them, referring to the Sand siblings. It is only logical that we take them back to Konoha given that they are children of the Kazekage. They would prove to be essential in future negotiations with Tsunagakuer. Shino said, keeping his calm demeanor. I agree with Shino. Shikamaru said, his tone having gone back to his usual lazy tone. No, Naruto said, getting the attention of everyone, free them and allow them to return home. Naruto said. Who are you to tell us what to do? And Shino makes a good point, why should we do what you say? Kiba fumed out of nowhere. However, Naruto blissfully ignored him. The other genins gave Naruto a question look. The Kazekage is probably dead, Naruto said, making Kankuro and Temari's eyes widen. The Kazekage, who was at the Chunin exam finals, was not the Kazekage but rather Orochimaru impersonating the Kazekage. When Suna realized that their leader was killed, they will abandon the sound and return home. Shino nodded along with Shikamaru, assuming that Orochimaru had manipulated Suna to believe that he was the Kazekage after having killed the real Kazekage. It is highly unlikely that Konoha will take any action against Suna. Shikamaru spoke his thoughts. They untied the two-tied Sand siblings. Temari gave Naruto a grateful smile, which Naruto did not return, making the girl frown. She tried her best not to let her temper get the best of her. She hated being ignored, especially by someone she was trying to show that she was grateful to. However, in her current situation she could do nothing. Naruto disappeared away from the group, making his way back to Konoha. Temari and Kankuro picked up Gaara and headed towards the Wind Country. After they had made a distance between themselves with the Konoha group, Gaara said two words that made his siblings almost cry. I'm sorry. With Naruto a few minutes later, Naruto reached the walls of Konoha. He looked around and saw that the fighting had already stopped. He had sensed multiple chakra signatures making their way away from Konohagakure when he was returning to the village. The wounded were being treated by many medical ninjas within the walls of the village. The barrier that was set on top of the academy had disappeared also. Naruto disappeared to the shinobi district. He wanted to allow his body to rest. He did not really care about any other details. What mattered most was that Konoha had won the invasion. 2 halves, 11:59 p.m. Atharva Patal, Chapter 8. Normality could not be said for the gloomy clouds that reigned over the village hidden in leaves. The Sound and Sand invasion had come and gone. The Konoha had remained standing. She had stepped out of the invasion as the winner. Konoha had battled against 2 hidden villages and won. Despite the victory, it still felt like a loss to many of the broken hearts in Konoha. A victory had been ensured, but it did not come without a price. Konoha had paid a high price for her victory. A price that she thought she would have never had to pay. The death of the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, the professor. The invasion of sand and sound might have been a failure to their end. However, Konoha had suffered a great loss. The Sandaime had lived through 2 great shinobi wars. He was a man of peace, loved and admired by many for his ways. He was the only Hokage to have served 2 terms and was the only man to have been Hokage for the longest period. The professor was indeed a great man in the eyes of many. Amongst his achievements were the 3 legendary shinobis, the Sanins. He had been their sensei and groomed them into the powerful shinobi they became. Unfortunately, the student he loved most over his other students was the cause of his death. Orochimaru, the snake Sannin, had been the reason the Sandaime had left the world of the living. Konoha was mourning at the death of its Hokage because of Orochimaru, a traitor to the village. He was not branded a traitor because of the invasion but because many years ago the snake Sannin had been abducting children and experimenting on them. Many mothers lost their children because of Orochimaru's actions. No one held love for the Sannin after his latest stunt. Almost everyone wished they could tear him into piece, kill him and then bring him life and repeat the process until their hearts were satisfied. Naruto sat alone at the roof of his apartment building. He had not even bothered to attend the Sandaime's funeral. His views on the old man differed from other people's views. The death of the old man did not concern him. Naruto had not attachments to the old man. Death was something that one could cheat or avoid. Madara had cheated death for many years but in the end, he died. Regardless of the circumstances concerning his death, the fact is that he died. Despite that belief, Naruto also believed that death would never claim him before he achieved his goals. It was possible for his grandfather to postpone the due of his death to a later date. It should also be possible for him, Naruto believed. Things were moving faster than Naruto had thought they would be. Every piece was already on its position. All that was left was for someone to ignite the flames. Although not saddened by the Sandaime's death, Naruto had not been expecting the Sandaime to die at this time. Naruto had thought that the Sandaime would live for a few more years. With the Sandaime alive, it would make things easy for him to act. Despite being manipulative, the Sandaime held a soft spot for Naruto, and Naruto knew how to exploit it. Given the death of the Hokage, a new leader would have to be set. Naruto just hoped that Danzo was not chosen as Hokage or he would be forced to have Zetsu assassinate the old war hawk. If Danzo became Hokage, his movements within the village would be restricted. Danzo would surely try to control him, not that he would succeed in doing that. No one controlled Naruto, and Naruto danced no one's drumming. Only Madara made him dance, but he was no more. With so many things happening fast, Naruto was learning that he should not be expecting things from other people to work on his favor. If he was going to get rid of his problems, he had to rely on himself. There would surely be surprises along the way but he just had to be prepared for them. Even if he cannot not be prepared for every surprise, he would just have to deal with them. Hokage's office. Homura and Kaharu, the former teammates of the Sandaime Hokage, stood within the office. After the burial of the Sandaime, they had called Jiraiya into the office to make him an offer. Konoha needed a leader. Despite the villages not suffering major casualties, there was still some destruction that needed to be corrected. To calm people down after the invasion and the death of Hiruzen, they needed someone strong to be a leader and calm the people's nerves. Jiraiya, I am sure you already know why we have called you here, Homura said, to which Jiraiya nodded. So will you, Jiraiya, take the mantle of Hokage? No, Jiraiya replied simply as if it was the easiest answer to give. What do you mean by no? Kaharu said, raising her voice. You have to take up this offer. You are the only one who is suitable for this job and the only Sannin who is still loyal to Konoha. Still, I cannot be Hokage. I am not cut out for it. I failed to protect Sensei, and besides, if I became Hokage no one would be able to run my spy network and you know how important it is. I also will not be able to do my research, which is important to me. Jiraiya reasoned why he could not be Hokage. Jiraiya, you have to think twice about what you are saying. You are the strongest in the village. We need someone like that to lead the village so that we do not appear weak to other villages with the death of Hiruzen. No, I can't be Hokage. Jiraiya said with a thoughtful look. I may be the strongest but I'm not the only Sannin who is still loyal to Konoha. He said. The elders were silent for a moment before they finally spoke. You don't mean her, Jiraiya. Jiraiya nodded. But she has not set foot in the village for 20 years and has refused to come back each time she was asked to return. I know, but all I need is to convince her to come back to the village. Give me 2 weeks and I will return with her. Jiraiya said. Do you even know where she is? No, but I know where to look for her. Fine, we will give you 2 weeks. If you don't come back with her by then you will be the next Hokage, Koharu said, making Jiraiya nod reluctantly. You can take some Anbu with you to look for her. The elder offered. Jiraiya shook his head. There is no need for that. Taking Anbu with me will only make her feel threatened. I have someone in mind who can accompany me. Who? Homura asked, guessing whom Jiraiya might be thinking of taking with him. Naruto, Jiraiya responded. No. Given his show at the exams, he has answers to give to the council and he needs to be confined within the village since we still do not know if he is loyal or not. Allowing him to leave with you might just give him the opportunity to make a run for it. He will not run away. I am sure if he wanted to leave the village, he would have done it already. Wouldn't it also be better to have him answer your questions with the new Hokage in attendance? Jiraiya countered. Fine, but if he runs away it will be in your head. Moreover, you have to remember now that it is common knowledge that he is Minato's son. Iwa might try something. I am well aware of that. Jiraiya said. Well then, I will be going. Jiraiya said and left through the window. Homura turned to Koharu. Are you sure it's wise to allow him to take the boy with him? I am not sure it is wise or not, but I doubt he will be able to run away even if he tried. Jiraiya will be with him always and we will send a squad of Anbu to tail them. Koharu replied, earning a nod from Homura. Even if Naruto tried to run, he would not get away with the Anbu on his tail along with Jiraiya. Still they hoped that he did not try anything stupid. Unknown location. Orochimaru was called a once-in-a-generation genius. He was not called a genius for nothing, he smart and saw things in a way that no one did. Years ago, when he was still a Konoha shinobi, he was branded the genius of Konoha. Orochimaru was brilliant, he had a brilliant mind. He was always scheming, making plans. He knew things that no one knew existed. He had even invented a jutsu that would make him live for all eternity. Despite all his brilliance, Orochimaru had his faults. One fault that has often costs him greatly was his habit to underestimate his opposition. When he tried to take over Itachi's body, he had underestimated the Uchiha and was left without an arm. He had underestimated his sensei and was almost sealed within the belly of the Shinigami. Had it not been for the fact that the old man was already tired because of their battle, he would have been sealed away. He recalled the cold fear he felt when he saw the Shinigami behind his sensei. He had screamed for his sensei to let him go. His body was giving up, it was rejecting him. He needed to transfer to another body soon before his current body melted down. He could not take Sasuke's body now since the boy was not even in his possession. Orochimaru's door opened and Kabuto walked inside with a tray holding a glass of water and some tablets. It is time for you medicine, Orochimaru-sama. Kabuto said, holding out the medicine and tablets for Orochimaru to drink. The snake Sanin coughed before he drank the tablets. How are going to solve your problem, Orochimaru-sama? Kabuto asked, worried about his master's health. I will have to transfer to a new body soon. This body is rejecting me. If don't switch bodies soon I might die. Orochimaru said in a rough voice. That aside, did you conserve the blood sample I gave you after we returned from branding Sasuke-kun? Yes, Kabuto replied with a slight nod. Good. Study it, find everything you can about the blood sample. Orochimaru ordered. If I may, Orochimaru-sama, whose blood sample is it? Kabuto asked carefully. Naruto-kun, Orochimaru replied, earning a confused look from Kabuto. Don't you find it curious that Naruto has the Sharingan and not just the normal Sharingan, the Mangekyo Sharingan? Naruto's both parents were not Uchihas as far as we know. However, Naruto's use of the Sharingan makes me assume that he has Uchiha blood running through his veins. This means one of his parents had Uchiha blood. I am curious as to what more secrets Naruto is hiding. Studying his blood sample will satisfy my curiosity. Kabuto nodded. I will get onto it right away. Kabuto replied and walked away, leaving Orochimaru to his thoughts. Naruto's apartment. Naruto was laying low inside his apartment. He was planning his next move, what he would be doing next. He could not just let things stay as they were. He needed to be doing something that was of importance instead of playing ninja for Konoha. He had enemies to prepare himself for. Konoha could wait. A knock on the door snapped Naruto out of his thoughts. He could guess who it was by the chakra he was sensing off the person. Naruto opened the door and found Sasuke standing outside. Naruto quirked an eyebrow. He wondered what Sasuke wanted from him. What can I do for you? Sasuke looked down as he was struggling to say what he wanted to say. He was acting like a shy girl trying to ask a boy she likes out on a date. Naruto sighed and told the Uchiha to enter. Sasuke walked inside Naruto's apartment. He looked around and saw that the place was neat. Everything was perfectly into place. It looked like a woman lived inside the place, which reminded of how clean his home used to be when his mother was still alive. Are you really an Uchiha? Sasuke asked, his tone down. I have already given you an answer to that. Sasuke gritted his teeth. Sometimes he hated how Naruto answered questions. That aside, if Naruto was Uchiha, it meant they are from the same clan and he was not alone anymore. True, he did not like Naruto a bit, but if Naruto was from his clan, it changed things. Naruto was unlike Kakashi, who has a borrowed Sharingan. Naruto was like him, their Sharingans were not borrowed from anyone. Why didn't you ever say anything to me? Sasuke asked forcefully. Naruto could tell that Sasuke was forcing himself to ask the question. Because I did not want to. He replied simply. Sasuke was quiet for some time before he spoke again. You have the same eyes as that man. I know how you to awaken them, so who did you kill to awaken them? Naruto's eyes morphed into the Mangekyo for a second before returning to their normal blue color. Sasuke could not really tell what was going through Naruto's head. The only thing that changed in his face was his eyes only. The Naka shrine, you are making use of it. Naruto said, completely disregarding Sasuke's question. The only way in which Sasuke knew about the secrets of the Mangekyo was if he read from the stone tablet in the Naka shrine located within the Uchiha compound. Only Uchiha could decipher the tablet. You know about it. How? Sasuke demanded, forgetting that Naruto did not answer his question. Were you expecting me not to know of it? It is a property of Uchiha anyway. Sasuke calmed himself down. I really don't like you, Naruto, Sasuke said before he could continue. Naruto corrected him. No, you just envy of me. Sasuke glared at Naruto. Well, because it was the truth. Naruto had more power than him, power that he needed to kill Itachi. We are from the same clan and there is just the two of us in Konoha, I think we should talk. It was obvious that Sasuke used all his willpower and swallowed a chunk of his pride to say those words. He was forcing himself because regardless of his feelings they were of the same clan. As it stood, the clan was nearly extinct because of the massacre several years ago. All in due time, Sasuke, Naruto said, now I must tell you to leave. Naruto said in a tone that left no room for saying otherwise. Naruto had sensed someone inside his apartment. Sasuke got up and left, leaving Naruto alone. You broke through my barrier, Naruto said, seemingly to no one. Well, that is to be expected from a seal master. Jiraiya appeared out of nowhere with a sheepish grin spreading across his face. You are lucky that I was inside the apartment. Had I not been in here, this apartment would have self-destructed. Naruto added, making Jiraiya wince at the thought of an explosion setting off while he was inside the apartment. The way Naruto said it, there was no reason to think it was just a bluff. Is there a need to set up something like that? What could you have hidden in here that you don't people to see? Jiraiya asked, figuring that Naruto would not go that far unless he had something inside his apartment that he did not want people to see. Hiding something. Might be so, Naruto responded. What do you want? Can't I just come here and see how you are doing? You can, I just do not want you to. Now get to the point. Jiraiya walked towards Naruto and sat beside the blonde. You have the Sharingan, can activate it, deactivate and seem to be able to use all its abilities. Only Uchiha can do that, so tell me, Naruto, how is it possible I knew everything about your parents? Your father was like a son to be. If one of them had Uchiha blood in them, I would have known about it. Jiraiya spoke, his expression changing to deadly serious. Huh. Jiraiya, you are a spy master, you deal with information gathering. I cannot just tell you how it is possible. Use your spy network and gather intel on me. When you get something valuable, come back to me. Naruto said to Jiraiya. Jiraiya was a spy master. A challenge like this one ought to prove interesting to the Sannin. However, Naruto knew that Jiraiya would not find anything about him. So you are not going to talk. However, it is only a matter of time before the council drags you to the council chambers and force you to tell them everything. If you refuse, they might even have someone enter your mind to find the answers they need. Jiraiya said with a smirk. Personally, he would be against the idea of having someone enter Naruto's mind, but if Naruto were refusing to cooperate, that would be the only choice left for the council to make. Nobody could refuse the council well except for him. But only because he was a Sannin and the strongest shinobi in the village. Naruto was just a genin and things would not work on his favor given that certain members of the council did not love him. Make me. I would like to see them try. If that is all you came here for, Jiraiya, you can leave. Jiraiya sighed. He would have to start searching things about the blonde, but first he had to start with the parents. Naruto was not going to give out his secrets that easily. That aside, he had other business to attend with the blonde. No, that is not all. I came here with you for a mission which you will do with me. He said, grinning at the blonde. I'm not interested in doing a mission with you. Naruto rebuffed. You are going on the mission whether you like it or not, Jiraiya said firmly. We have to find my former teammate and convince her to return to the village as Godime Hokage. Like I said, Jiraiya, I refuse to accept the mission. If you force me to go outside the village, I won't return. Jiraiya stared intensively at Naruto. If it was someone else, receiving Jiraiya's piercing gaze, he would have cowered down in fear and give in to Jiraiya's demands. Naruto was not anyone. He was trained to be able to keep calm regardless of the situation he was in. You are not doing me a favor by coming with me, but you will be rendering a service to Konoha by coming to search for the new Hokage, and yet you refuse. Jiraiya said, shaking his head. Your father would be disappointed in you. If Jiraiya was expecting a reaction from Naruto, he got none. Even if Minato were still alive, Naruto would not care what he thought of him. The man's opinion of him meant nothing to him. Jiraiya, you and I know very well that your request that I go with you to this mission has nothing to do with a service to Konoha. You only requested that I go with you because you want to get close to me. You want to take the time to convert me into your apprentice. You know very well that I would not serve any purpose in convincing the Senju to be Hokage. He paused for a moment. That being said, there is no reason for me to go on the mission with you. Jiraiya could not deny that his reasons for wanting Naruto to go with him were 100% not related to convincing Tsunade to come back and take the mantle of being Hokage. He just wanted to be close to Naruto. The mission would give him a better chance to being close to Naruto. Please, Naruto, let's go together. I know I screwed up, but I'm trying to make up for my mistakes here. Can't you give me a chance to make up for that? Jiraiya said, his voice taking a pleading tone. Naruto shook his head. I told you, I don't hate you for abandoning me. Therefore, there is nothing for you to settle. I can talk to you with no qualms, but I don't need any emotional attachments with you or anyone. Naruto said truthfully. Jiraiya was quiet for a moment. Naruto truly seemed not to hate him, but it did not make him feel any better. Nevertheless, there was a positive in all this. Naruto was willing to talk to him. Other than talking to him and not being able to do that, he would choose to have the privilege of being able to talk with the blonde, even if they could not form a bond. Finally accepting the situation, he nodded and smiled at Naruto. I guess I will see you when I return with the new Hokage. Jiraiya said and left. Later that night, Naruto thought of something he had been relenting to do. He closed his eyes and focused. When he opened his eyes, he was in a large old sewer. The sewer echoed with drips of water. Other than the drips, it was peacefully quiet. However, there was something sinister at the end of the sewer. Naruto sensed the sinister aura and walked slowly towards it. His watery footsteps ringed around the sewer, replacing the drips. Naruto stopped in front of a large gate with a piece of paper that had a kanji for seal. Two large blood-red eyes opened up and looked at him. The fearsome Kyuubi revealed itself from the shadows of its cage. It was resting its head on his paws. It was obvious that the beast had been napping. So my jailer has finally decided to grace me with his presence, the Kyuubi said with an amused tone. Have you come to tell me that my prison sentence has been cut short? Naruto knew the nine-tailed demon fox was being sarcastic. Is this what the great Kyuubi has been reduced to? A mere sarcastic biju robbed of your freedom, you shoulder hatred while calculating and binding for its time to escape from a prison created for you by a mere human. How pitiful. The Kyuubi glared at Naruto intensively with barely contained anger. Watch your mouth, human. I may not be able to do anything behind this bars, but this cage cannot hold me forever. You will do well to remember whom you are speaking to. So easily provoked and angered, Naruto murmured, but the Kyuubi heard him. I know that the seal cannot hold you forever. If you were complete, I am sure you would have already broken out. However, right now you are incomplete, no longer as strong as you were when you attacked Konoha. Nevertheless, you are still the strongest of the 9 despite being incomplete. The Kyuubi knew what Naruto meant by incomplete. Before he was sealed into Naruto, Minato split his chakra into 2, sealing the yin half within himself and the yang half within Naruto. That was what Naruto meant by incomplete, his other half was missing. Seeing the Kyuubi silent, Naruto spoke again, saying what he had come to say to the Kyuubi. I know you hate humans for their treatment towards your kind. You must hate me knowing that I am the grandchild of the man who called you a mindless beast that needed to be guided by his blessed eyes. Naruto paused for a moment. I have read everything about the 6 paths and your history to know full well that you are not a mindless beast that needs to be guided. As for your imperfection, I plan to fix that. In addition, for your prison sentence, you will have your freedom soon. Naruto said and disappeared from the sewer. The Kyuubi did not believe a word Naruto said. For years, Bijus were as nothing but weapons for their use. Humans could not be trusted, they had proved that many times. Even now, all the Bijus were sealed into a human to be the secret weapons. He could remember well when Hashirama told him that he was just too powerful, let loose and left to roam around the world. The Kyuubi never went to attack humans for no reason. He only attacked when they came after him so that they could capture him and make him their weapon. He always stayed away from humans, but still he was seen as a danger just because had greater power than theirs. Outside of Konoha, 2 figures were walking at the direction opposite to Konohagakure. Both wore black cloaks with red clouds and straw hats that hid their faces. The taller one had a large sword strapped behind his back, the sword was covered in bandages. The 2 men had successfully entered the walls of Konoha and infiltrated the village. They were looking for Uzumaki Naruto, or rather what was inside of him. Instead of finding the boy, they had found some interesting info about the blonde that was spreading around the village like a wildfire. The Uzumaki Naruto they were looking for was not as the same as they had found. The Naruto they had found was being called by many names, some called him Namikaze, some called him Uzumaki Namikaze-sama, a few called him Uchiha. The Uchiha part was unbelievable. None of the men had expected to find the name of the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki associated with the Uchiha. Furthermore, the rumors they had about Naruto possessing the Sharingan troubled them. The news of Naruto wielding the Sharingan troubled them. They also heard about Naruto's fights at the Chunin exam finals. They both knew the abilities that Naruto was said to have displayed, were abilities of the Mangekyo Sharingan. The shorter one wanted to prove everything for himself. It was unbelievable that Naruto was part of his clan. He had never heard anyone saying anything about it, and Naruto had no characteristics of an Uchiha. No one could have guessed that he would be part of his clan. At the moment he did not believe it. To believe it he had to see it for himself. Kisame, said the short one, identifying the taller one with a large sword strapped on his back, you go ahead to the meeting point. I want to go back to Konoha and confirm something. Kisame was given no time to say something as his partner disappeared in a murder of crows, leaving him alone. Kisame just continued walking away from Konoha with an annoyed look on his face. He hated it when Itachi did something like that. Naruto sighed as walked towards the Uchiha compound. Soon he would have to move into the compound and live there. The compound would also provide some security for him. The problem was Sasuke. The Uchiha's attitude annoyed him to no end. He would have to deal with it, or he would never be able to live freely inside of the compound. He had never visited compound before. Now was the time for him to visit the compound. Naruto trolled through the compound looking at everything. The compound was still intact, there were no houses that were destroyed. The only wrong with it was that the once lovely place was now like a ghost town. Before the massacre, one would find young Uchihas running around the compound with wide smiles raining over their faces. The place was once lively with clan members walking around with their Uchiha pride held high, was nothing more than a memory of what it used to be. Despite the fact that the Uchiha clan had lost most of its trust from the village and villagers tended to avoid the Uchiha clan members, happiness reigned over the compound. Satisfied with the condition of the compound, Naruto decided to make one more stop before leaving the compound. He was able to make the stop because there was no one following his movements. It was because of the recent invasion. Some ANBUs were working hard to ensure that the village was still in top position. Others were patrolling to ensure that no spies from other villages entered the village. This meant to contain what was happening inside of the walls of the village. The strongest of the shinobi were obviously out of the village doing high-ranked missions. To prove that Konoha could still handle high-ranked missions despite the recent invasion. What Konoha was doing now was displaying its power. Naka Shrine. Naruto entered the shrine with the use of his Sharingan and the Naka Shrine Pass technique. Only an Uchiha could enter into the shrine. It was protected because it held valuable clan secrets. Naruto was positive that even though Kakashi had an implanted Sharingan, he could not enter the shrine. Uchiha used the shrine as their secret meeting place. Naruto activated his Mangekyo Sharingan. He looked at tablet looking at read it. Everything he was able to read he already knew. Madara had copies of tablets at the hideout. The things he could not decipher needed the Rinnegan to be deciphered. The Mangekyo could not decipher everything about the Bijus and the Sage of Six Paths. Naruto sighed. Despite not having the Rinnegan, he already knew everything since Madara had already deciphered everything. The place was useful to hiding things. Naruto wanted to see it for himself. It was truly a safe place to say anything. Naruto felt someone and narrowed his left eye behind him. The man in a black cloak with red clouds appeared inside the shrine. Naruto, a glimpse of the man's eyes. Uchiha Itachi, Naruto said, turning towards the older Uchiha. Itachi now had no doubt. Naruto was an Uchiha. To be able to enter the shrine proved that not even Orochimaru, who could make his way through any barrier and was slippery as a snake, could enter the shrine. In addition, the Mangekyo he was seeing on Naruto's left eye proved that the villagers were not exaggerating. So it is true, Itachi said, walking close to Naruto. He took off his straw hat and his face became clear. Itachi's own Mangekyo Sharingan was activated. You are from my clan. How that came to be raises a lot questions. People always question what they cannot understand or what they refuse to believe. Is it not better to question things and accept them as they are? Naruto said. Naruto figured that Itachi would want to know how he was an Uchiha. He did not tell him the same answer as Jiraiya because Itachi was someone who Naruto had some kind of respect. That respect was because the Uchiha had massacred the whole Uchiha clan. He was the strongest Uchiha aside from Tobi. It was not that Naruto did not respect Jiraiya for his strength. Jiraiya was told what he was told because he was meddling into things that did not concern him. Telling him to search for information was just sending him on a wild goose chase since he will not find anything. Itachi, Naruto was telling to accept that he was an Uchiha and not try to reason things. Itachi nodded. I had come to see if what I had heard was true, Itachi said. Your presence, does it mean that Akatsuki has begun its hunt for Bijus? Naruto asked blankly. If Itachi was shocked that Naruto knew of the organization he worked for, he did not show it. No, not yet, we were just collecting information on Jinchurikis, Itachi replied. How did you know? Did Jiraiya tell you? No, Jiraiya has not told me about the organization. Given how secretive the Akatsuki is, I doubt he knows anything useful. Naruto replied. How do you know then? I did not think that you were the ones to be asking these questions, Itachi. I expected someone like your partner to ask such questions. Naruto revealed something. That Itachi had a partner. He never told Naruto he had a partner. By the way Naruto spoke, it sounded like he knew how his partner acted. How much do you know? Anyone with half brains would be truly curious. Well, I know everything about the Akatsuki, and that there are 4 Uchihas alive, Naruto said, getting a reaction from Itachi. Itachi's eyes widened slightly. Not anyone would have noticed, but Naruto noticed. Itachi knew who the 4th Uchiha was, and before I forget, I must thank you for the service you did to the Uchiha clan. Had you not massacred them, the Uchiha name would have been surely degraded and shamed. His words got another reaction from Itachi. It was unbelievable to say that Naruto was talking to him. The last time he saw the blonde, he was roaming around the village wearing an orange jumpsuit causing havoc. You have surely grown and matured since I was saw you, Naruto-kun. Itachi said, with a small smile that quickly disappeared. Do you intend to tell Sasuke the truth behind the Uchiha massacre? If I did that, then I would have to kill him. Naruto said. Itachi understood that in Sasuke's current condition, if he was told the truth, he would try to destroy the Leaf Village, which was why Naruto said he would have to kill him if he told him the truth. Sasuke was unstable at his condition, it made him capable of anything. He was really a disappointment, nevertheless he was still his brother and he still loved him. Next time we see each, it will be in a battle. I hope by the time you will have grown stronger than you are now. Itachi said, walking away. Leaving Kisame alone for a long time was not a smart thing to do. With Itachi gone, Naruto was left alone with his thoughts. The Akatsuki were making their move. Despite not actively starting to capture Jinchuriki, they were making a move. Naruto had not expected such a thing. He had to become strong, and the only way for him to that was to train. However, he could not train to his fullest ability within the walls of Konoha. The hideout had always provided him the perfect environment to train to his heart's extent. Training at the hideout was also good since he would have no one interrupting his training schedule. At the hideout, he only had Zetsu, who would never interrupt him while he trained. He had to leave Konoha for a couple of years to get the training he needs to become strong. Yes, when Jiraiya comes back he would have to leave the village. Whether they liked it or not, he would leave to get his training done. 2 weeks later, Konoha was once again happy. The lost grandchild of the first Hokage, Senju Hashirama, had returned. Not only had she returned, but she had returned as the Godime Hokage. The villagers were overjoyed by the news. Now they had 2 of their Sanins back at the village. Senju Tsunade had returned to the village with her apprentice Shizune. The woman gladly accepted the mantle of Hokage. However, a rumor was spreading out that Jiraiya had to pay all her debts, which were a lot, promised to stop hitting on her and promised to supply her with sake from Mount Mayuboku once in a month. The sake from the hidden village of the Toads was said to be a sake of highest quality. No sake from the elemental nations could rival its taste. That was just a rumor. Nobody knew how Jiraiya convinced the woman to return after she had left the village for 20 years. It had been 3 days already since Senju Tsunade was officially installed as Godime Hokage. Naruto had never seen the woman or Jiraiya before him. It did not concern him though. He had already prepared for his departure. It was only a matter of time. The following day Naruto was summoned to the Hokage's office. He was not the only to have been summoned by the Godime. Shikamaru, also summoned. Jiraiya and the Hokage's assistant Shizune were also present within the office. You were also summoned too, Shikamaru said in a bored tone, looking at Naruto. This is troublesome. Naruto gave Shikamaru a rare slight smile that was only alive for a second. Jiraiya noticed it, so did Tsunade and Shikamaru. Everything else is troublesome to you, Shikamaru. Jiraiya noted to talk to Shikamaru privately. Naruto was willing to go as far as to smile at Shikamaru. There had to be something between the two that Jiraiya did not know. Ever since he returned to Konoha he had never seen Naruto smile before, but in the presence of Shikamaru he smiled. Even though the smile was small, it was a smile nevertheless. The Godime cleared her throat to get everyone's attention. She looked at Naruto. So this is the son of Minato, Jiraiya told me about. He looks exactly like his father, well except for his eyes. Tsunade thought, looking at Naruto. Naruto's eyes, the Sharingan, staring at his left eye that was devoid of any emotion made her feel uncomfortable. Tsunade sighed and spoke. You must be wondering why I called you two here, Tsunade said. You two participated in the Chunin exam finals. The judges at the exams made a decision to promote you to Chunin. Tsunade announced. None of the two smiled or seemed to be excited about the news. Tsunade threw them both Chunin flanks. Shikamaru, you can leave. Naruto, stay behind. Shikamaru nodded and left with his Chunin flank jacket at hand. Time, we should go now. Jiraiya said to Tsunade. Knowing Tsunade, she probably had already forgotten about the council meeting. Tsunade nodded. Naruto, follow us to the council chambers. Tsunade spoke in a voice that made her suitable to be Hokage. Naruto followed her and Jiraiya without saying anything. Council chambers. The chamber was packed with council members. Clan heads formed the Shinobi Council, civilian council formed by 2 civilians from the business industry to ordinary civilians. In attendance were the elders of the village who served as advisors to the Hokage only. They also had more power than any other member did in the council room. Tsunade sat at the seat of the Hokage and Jiraiya stood behind her. Tsunade looked at Naruto who was standing calmly in front of the table. Take a seat, Naruto. Tsunade said, showing Naruto an empty chair. Naruto walked towards the chair and sat down. All eyes within the room turned to him. Naruto looked at each council member with his lone visible Sharingan eye. The most influential clan was the Hyuga clan, as it was now the most powerful clan within Konoha. The clan owned more land within Konoha than any other clan did. It also held a lot of bragging rights when it came to village politics. Hyuga Heihachi headed the clan. The other clan that held more power than other clans had to be the Nara clan. Their head clan was the Junin commander and acted like the brains of Konoha. Every strategy that the village formed was formulated by him, or had to pass through his eyes first for his approval. The other clans held equal power. One could not put them ahead of one another. They all served Konoha and provided Konoha service based on what their clans specialized. We can begin this meeting. Tsunade said, calling the meeting to begin. Are you really part of the Uchiha clan? Sume Inuzuka, head of the Inuzuka clan asked. Yes, Naruto replied calmly. How? Shimura Danzo asked. The old war hawk was one of the elders. He was truly curious as to how Naruto was an Uchiha. He knew both the boy's parents and none of them were Uchiha. So how was the boy part of the Uchiha clan? I cannot answer that question. Naruto replied simply. Listen boy, you will give us all the answers we need. We are the council of this village, and we order you to tell us everything we want to know. Elder Komura said firmly. Naruto was not fazed by her firm voice. As I said, I cannot answer the last question. Why do you refuse to answer that simple question, boy? What are you hiding? Danzo asked, his face showing no emotion whatsoever. Simply, because I do not want to tell you. You might be the council of the village. However, you are not my council, Naruto said. I, being a shinobi of this village, serve this village as best as I can. I will answer questions regarding missions and things that might trouble village security. But you cannot answer your questions about my family when I tell you how I am part of the Uchiha clan. I will be telling you about my family's secrets, a family that you hid from me when you decided to throw me at the orphanage. Jiraiya might not be pleased because Naruto was not giving answers, but he was happy with how Naruto was dealing with the council. It was the truth. They could not legally force him to answer them questions about his family. Reminding them that they hid his parentage was a wise to say given the situation. Tsunade had the same thoughts as Jiraiya. The clan heads had to agree with Naruto. Naruto was not at liberty to discuss about his family. You dare refuse an order from the council, boy. Order of the council. Well, this is your answer. I don't know how. I expect you to have the answers since you have known about my parents ever since I was born. You know of them ever since they were still children. Shouldn't you be the one to give me the answers? That was one way to avoid answering the question without sounding as if he was refusing an order from the council. Shikaku smiled. That was quick thinking from Naruto. He knew it was a lie, as Naruto said before. He did not want to answer the question. Nevertheless, Naruto could easily say he said that because he was embarrassed about not knowing anything about his parents. He could say that he just found out one day after a life-threatening situation that his Sharingan had awakened. Why did you keep your Sharingan a secret? I was afraid that I would be killed like the rest of the Uchiha clan members if I came out. Naruto replied with another lie. It was interesting to see the dumb and fuming faces of the council members. The lies provided him entertainment so he could get through the meeting. Chibi Shikaku was rolling around in laughter. That was a textbook answer. It was another lie, but it was also a believable reason. If anyone found out that he or she was an Uchiha after the whole clan was massacred with only one survivor, he or she would surely hide the fact that he was an Uchiha in fear of being killed. If someone had given that reason, it would have been believable. Naruto, you know that's not the reason you hid the Sharingan, and you know who between your parents gave you Uchiha blood. Jiraiya said, looking for answers. Jiraiya, this council decided to hide my parentage from me. They threw me with the other orphans and watched me, as the villagers hated me, ignored me, treated me like a demon, like an outcast. You should be grateful that I am still here in this village, instead of forcing answers from me. Naruto stated, his tone devoid of any emotion. Two halves, 11:59 p.m. Atharva Patil. What do you mean, we should be grateful? Danzo asked with narrowed eyes. Exactly what I said. After how this village has treated me, you should be grateful that I am still loyal. I could have simply let the Kyuubi out and let it finish what it had started. However, I did not. I held on and was never tempted to do such a thing. Here I am being questioned like a criminal simply because I chose to keep a few things to myself. Naruto said as his Sharingan morphed into its Mangekyo Sharingan state. The Mangekyo glowed reddish blood as if it was daring anyone to say otherwise. Danzo narrowed his eyes at Naruto. The Kyuubi was untamed. Had Hiruzen given him the Kyuubi, he would have trained it to become a weapon to Konoha and loyal to him. Because of Hiruzen's foolish beliefs, the Kyuubi was making fools out of them. It was unforgivable. I think it is safe to say that what Naruto is saying is that if he wanted to betray Konoha, or plot something against it, he would have done it already given his hushed childhood. Which everyone was aware of but did nothing about it. Personally, I would not wish for what my own child to go through what Naruto went through as a child because of his burden. Shikaku spoke for the first time. Naruto is saying he has no plans to betray the village and will continue to serve it. Even though we allowed the villagers to do what they pleased with him. So there is no reason to be suspicious of him, and the questions being asked are unnecessary. Shikaku concluded, earning nods from other head clans and the Hokage. I want answers from Naruto, but I have to agree with Shikaku, Jiraiya said, making it known that he was not happy with the lack of answers from Naruto but agreed with what Shikaku was saying. I also believe that Naruto is not planning anything against the village. The elders did not like where things were now. With the majority favoring Shikaku's conclusions, Naruto would walk away without having to answer to their questions. It not matter though, there was still another time. They would get him another time, and he would answer everything. One little mistake and he would regret making fools of them. Fine, but next time he comes here we will not tolerate such act of disrespect. It will be seen as treason. Kaharu said. The civilian council even now never said a word. It was as if someone had threatened or paid them to be quiet during the whole meeting. Naruto did not care either way. Well, I guess Naruto can be excused now, so we can discuss other subjects of importance. Tsunade said, stressing the word importance. Naruto left the chamber, leaving the council members to discuss matters about the village stability, security and economy. The following day Naruto was again called to the Hokage's office. He had been planning to visit the office to let the Hokage know of his plans. It would not be good if he disappeared without telling the Hokage. Tsunade was sitting behind her desk. A bottle of sake and a large stack of papers decorated the table. The woman to have been having a bad day. Jiraiya was sitting on the window with a rather calm look on his face. Tsunade looked at Naruto. He was not wearing the Chunin flank jacket she had given him yesterday. Just like yesterday, his Sharingan was active. She really needed to ask Jiraiya why it was always active. I called you here because Jiraiya has something important to tell you. Tsunade said, leaning back to her chair. Naruto looked at Jiraiya, waiting for the Sannin to say whatever that was important. My spy network has discovered an organization called the Akatsuki. I don't know much about the organization. What I do know is that they used to work as mercenaries, but they had changed their objectives, Jiraiya said. Currently their objective is to hunt down Jinchurikis for their bijus. For what purpose I do not know. I only know two of the organization's members and both are S-rank criminals. Uchiha Itachi, I'm sure. Jiraiya trailed off, seeing Naruto raise his hand. What? I have heard enough, Naruto said. I'm aware of the organization. He revealed. How do you know of it? It took me years just to find out what I told you. Jiraiya queried. I have my ways, Jiraiya. It should not be surprising that I'm aware of the organization given that I am what they are after, no rather the Kyuubi is what they are after. Jiraiya was trying not to be surprised by this. Naruto always seemed to surprise him each time he spoke. Nevertheless, the fact that Naruto knew made it easy for him to let Naruto know just how dangerous the organization was and that his life was in danger. You must know that the organization is a threat. At your current level you cannot handle S-rank criminals on your own. If they were to attack you now, they would capture you, Jiraiya said. I have decided to take you on a 3-year training trip to prepare you so that you might be able to protect yourself. Jiraiya said with a grin. I cannot go with you, Jiraiya. Naruto said. Before he could continue, Tsunade spoke. Jiraiya assumed you would say something like that. Which is why, she said holding a paper. This paper outlines that you were given permission to leave the village for 3 years on a training trip with Jiraiya. Everything is signed and approved. Tsunade said with a smile, knowing that there was no way now that Naruto could refuse. I was trying to say that I cannot go with Jiraiya because I have already left the village. Now, according to that document, on a training trip for 3 years. I might have left with Jiraiya. It is because I do not need him for my training. Tsunade and Jiraiya stared at Naruto with wide-eyed. What do you mean, you already left the village? Tsunade asked. I am a clone. I have already been planning to leave the village to train. Should I have asked permission, you would have denied me, if Jiraiya had not suggested it. If it was Jiraiya's suggestion, I would have to go with him, which I did not want. You do now that if it went for this document, you would have risked being branded a missing nin. Tsunade said. I am aware of that, but to train to my heart's extent I had to leave alone. Naruto said. Well, I'm out of chakra. Naruto said and disappeared in a puff of smoke. I'm going to look for him. Jiraiya said and disappeared from the window. He did not give Tsunade time to say anything. He was a little sad that Naruto had left the village without him. Not that only, should the Akatsuki find him before he does, they could capture him. Minato would never forgive him if something happened to Naruto. Later that day, Tsunade sat in her office uncomfortably. The work was just too much for her to handle. The paperwork she had to sign and the orders she had to give were putting a toll on her. She was beginning to wonder why she had even accepted the mantle of Hokage in the first place. She cursed Jiraiya for making her come back to the village. If she had not come back now, she would have been somewhere gambling, losing money. Even though she never won, it was fun for her. That time she could drink all the sake she wanted day and night. Now she had to focus of her work as the Godime Hokage. It was too much work overload for her. After taking as Godime Hokage, she had to deal with stabilizing the village because of the recent invasion. A month had yet to pass since the invasion occurred. The news and events were still fresh within people's minds. Konoha had also lost a Hokage because of the invasion, the Sandaime Hokage. It was up to her to deal with the issues. The Sandaime had been a big part of Konoha's history and position within the elemental nations. Aside from the Sandaime's death, there were no other major losses that the village suffered. A few shinobis had lost their lives, but it did not damage the village's military force. The strongest shinobi within the village were still alive and in good condition. With her introduction as Hokage, it would also influence people to be brave, knowing that another strong person was leading them. Villagers could easily panic because of the recent invasion that had occurred and the mastermind behind the invasion was still alive. Their panic would be because they fear that another invasion might hit them again. Tsunade as Godime Hokage had to ensure that the villagers did not have those kinds of thoughts. The village did not lose much from the invasion, only a few buildings were destroyed. Tsunade had to make sure that the buildings were rebuilt with the funds she had at her disposal. The hospital, despite being in good condition, was not at the standard she liked it to be. For it to be where she wants it to be, she had to train kunoichis who aspire to be medics. The village's economy was in a good shape. She could not complain with anything after reading the reports. The fire daimyo had been a big help for the village to recover from the invasion. He had given the village his full support and did not cut down the money he gives to the village. In fact, he increased the budget so that the village could recover quickly and asset itself as the strongest of the 5 great shinobi villages. Konoha had gone through many conflicts with other villages, but it has always stayed at the top. The economy had never faltered. Maybe it was because the village always had someone or few shinobis who were known throughout the elemental nations. Tsunade sighed as she rubbed her temple. Overseeing things within the village was a lot harder, especially because of the recent invasion. Had it not been for the invasion, she would have not been having so much to do. She cursed Orochimaru for invading Konoha. It was his fault that she was not having time to have some sake. She had to keep working, go to meetings discussing on how things were going to be run, the changes that had to occur. It was all tiring for her. At least he had Shizune to help her with some to the work she has to do. She had a problem with the council. It has not been a week since she took charge of the village and they were already making decisions for her and telling her what to do. The elders troubled her. Tsunade had come to hate them because they liked being in control of everything. She wondered how her sensei was able to stand them and not think of a way to kill them. She had already thought of a few scenarios where the elders, accidentally, lose their lives. They were power-hungry and wanted to rule the village even though they had selected her as Hokage. At least some aspects of the village were not giving her headaches. The shinobi that made the village's military were all in working condition. Konoha could stand another invasion should anyone consider invading them. Her presence along with Jiraiya put things at Konoha's advantage. Tsunagakure, the village had sent messengers to resolve the issues between the two villages. Tsunagakure had taken part in the invasion that saw the death of the Sandaime Hokage. That only gave grounds to Konoha to attack the village without any other village saying anything to it. What complicated the issue was that Tsunagakure and Konoha were allies when Tsunagakure took part in the invasion. By being against Konoha, the village betrayed Konoha, the alliance they had made. Their reasons did not matter as long as they did go against Konoha in the invasion. To attack a village you are allied to, is a major offense that the village had to pay heavily for it. At its current strength, Suna could to compete with Konoha. Konoha was the strongest of the 5 great villages and Suna was the weakest. Suna had also lost almost 50% of their military force because of the invasion. Most of their shinobis had died during the invasion, which meant that the village would be eradicated should Konoha decide to invade it. Danzo had been pushing for the invasion but she successfully denied the motion. She did not want another war to start. Tsunade was aware that Suna knew that should they fight Konoha they would be eradicated. Konoha still had its military force operating almost at full power. Given the hard truth, Suna will do anything to make that a new alliance with Konoha is formed. They will do so to save their own skins. It would be hard to form the alliance since the trust between the two villages had been lost. Tsunagakure had betrayed them and there was no telling if they would betray them again. They did once, it was possible that they could do it again. Tsunade was not someone to take advantage of the situation and force things out of Suna. She wanted to settle things with Tsunagakure so that the villages can move on and continue to work together as allies. With the treaty between the villages to be discussed next week, Konoha had to take to account that Tsunagakure was manipulated by Orochimaru. Orochimaru had killed the Yondaime Kazekage and impersonated as him for a long time. He made the village believe that they were following the orders of their Kazekage just so he could have the village's military force in his control. The fact that Orochimaru had manipulated Tsunagakure made it an easy choice for Tsunade to decide against invading the village. However, even though they were being manipulated, the fact remains, they betrayed Konoha. For their betrayal, they would have to compensate for the damage done to the village. Another issue, which she had to deal with, was Uzumaki Naruto or rather Uchiha Namikaze. However, she doubted that the boy would use Namikaze. Jiraiya had told her that he did not see or acknowledge Minato as his father. With all she has read about the boy on his reports, he is described as a distant person. With what she had seen from him ever since she first talked to him, she had to agree with the report. Another issue that was giving her a headache was that Naruto had left the village. Jiraiya had assured her that he was not defecting. From the reports, he is very secretive, which was why he even decided to leave the village alone. Nevertheless, it troubled her knowing that the Akatsuki was also out there and could capture him should they get to him before Jiraiya. He was not strong enough to handle S-rank criminals. Jiraiya would have offered better security since he can take on S-rank criminals. Her worries were eased by the fact that he did say that he was gone. She just did not found that he had disappeared from the village. She was upset because of his disregard of doing things properly. A shinobi of the village did not just leave a village without permission. If a shinobi did that, he risked to be hunted down by hunter nins since they would be forced to list him as a missing nin. By the looks of things after listening to his clone, she deducted that even if she had refused to allow him to leave he would have left. If it were not for the fact that she had a document that said he was on a training trip, she would have been forced to punish him for his insubordination. Thinking of it, he never did refer her as Hokage, or by her name. The fact that he had decided to leave without permission from her made her want to discipline him when Jiraiya does find him. He had to know that he could not do what he pleased and that she was the Godime Hokage and her word was law. If she said no, it was no doing, otherwise would be treason. She had to deal with him. She could not have subordinates who did not respect her word and authority. Tsunade also had to deal with the issue of Sasuke Uchiha. From what she had read from his profile, he was also distant as the other Uchiha, but Sasuke had other things that distinguished him. He was a cold, arrogant and a spoiled brat. The boy was obsessed with power and killing his traitorous brother. He did not care about anything other than his revenge. Sasuke was why she was waiting for Hitaki Kakashi. She had been waiting for the famed Sharingan. No Kakashi for 2 hours. Jiraiya told her about his tardiness and laid-back attitude, but she did not think it was this bad. It annoyed her having to be kept waiting by her subordinate. Kakashi walked inside the office. His right eye was firmly of his familiar orange book as he flipped a page. You wanted to see Hokage-sama. Kakashi said without even taking his eye off his book to look at the Godime when he spoke. A tick mark appeared on Tsunade's forehead. Kakashi had the nerve to keep her waiting and then not offer her an explanation. To make matters worse, he was not even looking at her when he spoke. His eyes were on the orange book that Jiraiya writes. Kakashi, put that book away and look at me, or I will break every bone in your body and heal you just so I can beat you up again. Tsunade said, dangerously clenching her fists. Kakashi gulped and put away his book. Tsunade could make her threat a reality. She had a hot temper and one of her chakra-enhanced punches was capable of putting anyone out of commission. If she did beat him to an inch of his life, she could save him. Given that she was the best medic in all the elemental nations, there is nothing that she has been unable to heal. Good, Tsunade said, leaning back to her chair. I called you here about your student Uchiha Sasuke. Tsunade said, getting straight to the point. She would deal with the man's tardiness some other day, now she had important matter to discuss with the Junin. Did he do something? Kakashi asked immediately, fearing that his revenge-driven student might have done something stupid. Tsunade shook her head. No, she replied, making Kakashi sigh in relief. You are aware that Orochimaru has already marked Sasuke and that he wants him to be his next vessel. The council fears that if Orochimaru comes back and promises Sasuke more power than he already has given, Sasuke will defect and follow Orochimaru. Tsunade said. Kakashi nodded. I have seen it in his eyes. He would not even think twice should Orochimaru try to get him. He said sadly. Yes, that is what the council fears. They have decided to give Sasuke what he wants the most, power. Giving him power will make sure that he does not defect. The council does not want to lose their precious Sharingan, seeing how the Uchiha clan has become nearly extinct. Tsunade said, saying the last part bitterly. How is he going to be given power? You are going to take him on a 3-year training trip. You will train him as hard as you can. Tsunade replied. Kakashi was quiet for a moment. He was not surprised that the council was going this far to make sure that Sasuke stayed in the village. They had done it before, when they ordered him to train Sasuke for a month before the Chunin exams finals. He was also the only one suitable to train Sasuke since he was also a Sharingan user like Sasuke. Okay, Kakashi said with a small eye smile. Going away from the village would give him a chance to read his book without interruptions and he would not have Guy challenging him, but what about my other students? I cannot just leave them behind. Kakashi raised a concern. He would be a bad sensei if he were to leave his other students without making sure that they were taken good of. Do not worry about them. According to Sakura's profile, she almost has perfect chakra control. I want to take her to train under medical ninjutsu. What needs work is her fangirl attitude. Tsunade said. Well, that is one of his students taken care of. What about Naruto? Tsunade went through hand seals, activating a privacy seal so that no one did not overhear what she was about to tell Kakashi. What I am about to tell you is known to me and Jiraiya only, Tsunade said. Naruto left the village. Tsunade revealed seriously. Kakashi widened his eye. He could not believe what the Hokage had just said. He defected. Kakashi said in disbelief. Tsunade shook her head, making Kakashi let loose of a sigh of relief. He went away to train. The brat left without even asking me first. When we found out that he had left, we were telling him, which turned out to be his clone, that Jiraiya was going to take him on a training trip so that he could protect himself against the Akatsuki. It appeared that he already knew about the criminal organization. Kakashi nodded. Even if he went to train, was not it better to have left with Jiraiya-sama, who could offer him better security? I did point that out. Nevertheless, the reason he left without permission was that he knew he would not be allowed to leave alone, and he said that he did not need Jiraiya. So he left alone even though it risked him being branded a missing nin. But still, leaving alone is not the wisest thing to do. Naruto might be strong, but he cannot take on S-rank criminals on his own. Kakashi said, believing that it was suicide for Naruto to leave the village without someone like Jiraiya protecting him. He seems to be rather smarter than Sasuke. Therefore, I have a feeling that there is a place he went that he knows and we do not, so that he could train while also hiding. Given how informed and secretive he is, it should not be surprising if he did something like, Tsunade said, not knowing how right she was. Still, leaving on his own was not the wisest thing to do. I agree with you on that. Nevertheless, right now we can only hope that Jiraiya finds him before the Akatsuki does, Tsunade said. As far as the council knows, Naruto is on a 3-year training trip with Jiraiya. I would like to keep it that way. Understood, Hokage-sama. Kakashi knew that if the council got a wind of the fact that Naruto left the village alone, they would try to punish him or even brand him as a missing nin. You are to be gone by tomorrow morning. Jiraiya will visit you occasionally to see your progress, so let us know of where you go. You will also receive an S-rank pay each month to take care of yours and Sasuke's expenses. Tsunade said, going back to Kakashi's training trip with Sasuke. Kakashi, before you go, I want you to search for anything you can find on Naruto's whereabouts while in your training trip, do it discreetly. Hi. Good, you are dismissed. Tsunade said, dismissing the Junin. Kakashi left in a puff of smoke. He was going to the memorial stone to say goodbye to Rin, Obito, and Minato-sensei before he went to tell Sasuke to get ready. Tsunade went back to her paperwork. She had a lot of it to sign and approve. A few days later, Naruto's hideout. Naruto stared at the collection of Sharingan eyes that Madara had collected over the years. There were hundreds of Sharingan eyes stored safely. Naruto wondered what Madara wanted to do with so many eyes. Well, he could have just been keeping them safe from non-uchihas who would try to get their hands on the powerful dujutsu. Even though a non-uchiha could not use the dujutsu's full abilities, it was still a powerful tool even in the hands of a non-uchiha. Kakashi had become famous with his use of the Sharingan. Despite not having Uchiha blood, he used it efficiently. If Madara stored this many eyes, he must have also preserved his original eyes. The eyes he wielded before he took his brothers to gain the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto spoke as Zetsu appeared from the shadows of the dark room. Yes, he did. Do you want them? Zetsu asked. Yes, I need to gain the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Madara's other eyes are with Nagato. I can't take them to gain the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan given my current level of power, and I also want to awaken my own Rinnegan. Taking Nagato's eyes would complicate things. Naruto said. I will go and get them. I know where he hid them. Zetsu said before he disappeared. An hour later, Zetsu came back with the pair of eyes. Naruto led Zetsu to a room mainly used to experiment. Implant them on me. Naruto ordered and lay on the bed. Zetsu did as told and implanted the eyes. He took Naruto eyes and stored them elsewhere. 3 days later, Naruto stood at his training ground with Zetsu watching. He had been testing the power of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Naruto had though that there was no difference between the MS and the Ms. He thought that the difference was that with the Ms, one did not suffer from blindness. However, he was wrong. The Ms had more power than the MS. Naruto turned around and looked at Zetsu. Zetsu, I want you to do something for me while I train. Naruto said, I want you to search the elemental nations, do not leave a stone untouched. Try to find if there is another Uzumaki beside me and Nagato that is alive. Zetsu did not bother to ask why. He just nodded and disappeared to begging with his search. Naruto examined his hands before holding a ram seal. It's time for me to use the unique ability of the Kage Bunshin to fast-track my training. Naruto said to himself.